Chapter 824, Fly, Divine Cranes, as long as you can do something for me, it's not impossible for me to give you some phoenix timber core. With such thoughts in mind, Jiang Qingqin regained his confidence. Oh. Curious to know why the other party had suddenly changed his mind, Zhang Xian turned to look at him. Currently, my zither plane can only draw in 6 cranes. If you can help me reach the attainment of 7 cranes within the next 2 hours, I can give the phoenix timber core to you for free. Jiang Qingqin revealed his motive. 6 cranes? Attainment of 7 cranes? What are those? Zhang Xian was bewildered by those foreign terms. He had never come into contact with any demonic tunist books before, and the other party used professional jargon specific to the occupation, so he couldn't understand it at all. You don't know. As the other party had said that he would challenge the demonic tunist exam, school head Jiang had assumed that the other party possessed capability as a demonic tunist on par with him. Yet, to hear him ask such basic questions at this moment, Jiang Qingqin felt his vision turning dark, and he nearly spurted blood. The hell? These are terms one learns as an apprentice, and yet you don't know them. Could it be that you don't know a single thing about demonic tunists? An amateur like you dared to arrogantly declare that you would take the demonic tunist examination? Zhang Xian nodded. All right then. Of all demonic tunes, those involving zither tend to possess the greatest offensive power, so most demonic tunists choose to immerse themselves in the study of the zither. It also became the basis to judge one's level of attainment as a demonic tunist. The deeper one's understanding of the zither, the more aligned one's zither playing will be with nature, drawing in more divine cranes to dance to one's melody. Under normal circumstances, a 1-star demonic tunist will be able to draw in 1 crane, and a 2-star will be able to draw in 2 cranes, so on and so forth. This is also the standard for determining a demonic tunist's capability. Suppressing his frustration, Jiang Qingqin explained the basic knowledge, which even an apprentice would know. I am currently a 6-star pinnacle demonic tunist, and I am only capable of charming 6 divine cranes to dance at once. 7 is still beyond my reach. If you can allow my zither playing to charm 7 divine cranes to dance simultaneously, I will give my phoenix timber core to you. 7 divine cranes dancing simultaneously. Zhang Xian frowned. That's right. Jiang Qingqin nodded. What I am lacking now is just an impetus for a breakthrough. If you can help me accomplish it, I will agree to your request. Otherwise, I will have to ask of you to leave and never come back. This. Zhang Xian pondered for a moment before turning his gaze to Jiang Qingqin. In other words, as long as 7 divine cranes dance simultaneously while you are playing, you will accede to my request. Can I interpret it as so? That's right. Jiang Qingqin nodded. That's simple. I won't even need 2 hours. Just 5 minutes will do. Zhang Xian smiled confidently. He was still thinking what kind of arduous mission he would be tasked with, but to think that this would be it. Count on me, I will solve it for you within moments. The 2 elders were stunned. Just 5 minutes will do. Are you for real? Jiang Qingqin had cultivated diligently for 500 years only to yet to make the breakthrough to attainment of 7 cranes, and yet, within 5 minutes, you are going to make him make breakthrough? I thought you didn't even know about the 6 cranes and 7 cranes, are you sure you possess the ability to do so? If you succeed, putting aside the phoenix timber core, I will even allow you to take the entire phoenix timber tree away with you. Of course. Zhang Xian reassured with a nod. That's good to hear. So, where did I go wrong? Why am I still unable to make a breakthrough after so many years? Jiang Qingqin was a little hesitant, but as he recalled the unbelievable records the young man before him had achieved, he decided to put his trust in the other party. Even Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but be curious about what Zhang Xian was going to do. To make such big claims, he must have some unbelievable means up his sleeves. Was this the prowess of a master teacher who had comprehended the eye of insight? Play the zither. Zhang Xian instructed. All right. Knowing that he had to first display his capability before the other party could offer him any pointers, Jiang Qingqin's fingers slid across the zither, and a note resonated in the air. It was like a melody had descended from the heavens, resounding in the courtyard. The melody mesmerized the listeners in an instant. It was a tune permeated with grandness, as if one had ascended to godhood and was laughing heartily at the world beneath his feet. Demonic tunist was an occupation specializing in soul attacks. Upon reaching a high level of attainment, one could create an entire army or a destructive tempest with just a slight flick on the zither, making it difficult for even Saint Realm experts to withstand their might. Legend has it that demonic tunists were once known as divine tunists. But 20,000 years ago, a 9-star divine tunist found himself deeply encircled by his enemies. With his zither in hand, he drew out demons with his playing to slaughter the million-strong army around him. That battle had forged the reputation of demonic tunist in the master-teacher continent. It was then that everyone learned that the seemingly unimpressive occupation could wield such fearsome power as well, and it was in deference to them that the world had conferred on them the word demon. Impressive. Zhang Xian had to drive his heaven's path Xinqi before the pressure on his body finally disappeared. He couldn't help but be astonished. If he hadn't been prepared, he might have been left in a trance from the zither music. It seemed that even the occupations of the lower 9 paths held immense potential in them. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly have been passed down over several dozen millennia without going into decline. Jiang Qingqin frowned. He had been intending to teach the young man a lesson, so he had intentionally added an offensive edge to his playing. He had thought that the other party would have been mesmerized by his playing, especially given the other party's low cultivation, but who knew that in a blink of an eye, the other party's eyes would immediately become clear. He couldn't help but be impressed. It was no wonder the other party could induce such widespread fear around the academy, leaving even school head Lu in a frenzy. As young as the other party might be, he did seem to possess unparalleled talent and capability. Hoo. Impressed, Jiang Qingqin decided to stop with his little tricks, and the zither music abruptly became gentle. Upon hearing the music, some of the divine cranes suddenly began to call excitedly, and they rose into the sky to dance. 1 crane, 2 cranes, 3 cranes. Not long later, 6 cranes were dancing along to the zither music. Seeing that the zither music could indeed charm the divine cranes into dancing, Zhang Xian nodded in awe. As a soul oracle, Zhang Xian had a deep understanding of soul. This granted him the ability to induce effects reminiscent of demonic tunes with his words, such as inducing dizziness in another's soul. However, it was still beyond him to charm so many divine cranes into dancing along to a melody. Zhang Shi, as you can see, I have achieved the attainment of 6 cranes. However, I am still unable to charm the 7th crane. How should I play in order to make the breakthrough? Jiang Qingqin's voice echoed resoundingly amid the zither melody. Despite his advanced age, his voice had a melodious edge to it, reminiscent of singing. It felt extreme comfortable, and it complemented beautifully with the zither melody. Leave it to me. Hearing the other party's words, Zhang Xian chuckled. He stepped forward, heading to where the divine cranes were loitering around. Even after 6 of the cranes had left, there were still 10 left in the group. Jiang Qingqin had been taking care of these cranes since they were young, so they were extremely obedient to him. At this moment, they were standing silently on the spot, seemingly enjoying the music. Let's begin. When Zhang Xian was around 10 meters away from a crane, he stretched his back and took in a deep breath. Heaven's Path Movement Art. Heaven's Path Fist Art. With a forceful step, his figure abruptly turned into an afterimage. Peng 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 peng. 10 consecutive punches struck the 10 remaining cranes standing peacefully on the spot. In an instant, they were sent flying, and their bodies crashed into the wall of the backyard, leaving a huge dent behind them. Jiang Qingqin staggered. He was still wondering what pointers Zhang Shi was going to offer him when the latter abruptly laid his hands on his crane, smashing them into the wall. In that instant, he nearly fainted from fury. Ding! In that moment of panic, Jiang Qingqin abruptly exerted too much force, and a string on the zither snapped, created an abrupt disharmonious note. Glaring at Zhang Xian with eyes that could kill, he roared, "Zhang Shi, what are you doing?" It was no wonder he was angry. He had taken care of those cranes from young, and he had long developed a sense of fondness for them. Even though he could tell that the other party had held back his punches, leaving a breath in his cranes, still, to pummel his cranes without any hesitation, unforgivable. "School head Jiang, please calm down. Continue playing your melody. I will have 7 cranes dancing before you very soon," Zhang Xian instructed. Very soon. Jiang Qingqin was slightly hesitant. "You are supposed to offer me pointers so that I can make a breakthrough in my demonic tune arts, but instead of focusing your attention on me, you turn to my cranes instead. Can I really make a breakthrough like this? Trust me, you will see soon enough." Zhang Xian nodded in reassurance. "Humph. That had better be the case. Otherwise, you'd better have an explanation for harming my cranes." With a livid expression, Jiang Qingqin fixed the snapped string with his jinqi and began playing once again. The fellow before him had created simply far too many miracles, and he had been stuck at the attainment of 6 cranes for far too long. His eagerness to achieve a breakthrough and the other party's confidence in his words convinced him to give it another try. Trying ting tang ting. A melody that created the vivid imagery of a flowing river deep in the mountains drifted in the air, creating a soothing atmosphere. Upon hearing the music, the 6 divine cranes which had been spared from the previous injury began dancing in the air once again. Seeing how school head Jiang could quickly keep his emotions in check and play an impeccable tune rich with emotions, Zhang Xian couldn't help but nod in commendation. Chuckling softly, he waved his hands and said, "Fly freely, divine cranes." Along with his words, one of the cranes which he had pummeled just a moment ago struggled to its feet, and with a loud call, it leaped into the sky to join the dancing 6. "You succeeded." Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Wasn't Zhang Xian going to offer some pointers to his old friend to help him achieve a breakthrough? Yet, with a "fly freely, divine cranes," his old friend reached the attainment of 7 cranes just like that? But judging from the melody, it didn't seem like there was any improvement or change in his old friend's playing whatsoever. Before Vice School Head Ning could make sense of what was happening, yet another crane struggled to its feet. After shaking its head to recover from its dizziness, it abruptly flapped its wings, and with a loud call, it joined the dancing group. 8 cranes. Vice School Head Ning's lips twitched. Wasn't his old friend still struggling to charm 7 cranes a moment ago? How did it suddenly turn into 8 cranes? 8 cranes. Did this mean that his old friend was on par with an 8-star demonic tunist? But his old friend's music hadn't changed whatsoever, and Zhang Shi hadn't offered any guidance either. How did the level of his playing abruptly rise like that? Just as Vice School Head Ning was still perplexed by the sight before him, the rest of the cranes, which had been struck into the wall, struggled to their feet, and shaking their heads, they flapped their wings and soared into the sky as well. 9 cranes, 10 cranes, 11 cranes. Vice School Head Ning was frenzied by the sight before him. For a moment, he was so agitated that he could hardly catch his breath. The highest level a demonic tunist could achieve was the attainment of 9 cranes, and yet, at this very moment, there were 11 cranes flying in the air. Not only so, the remaining cranes were showing signs of joining the dance as well. Just what was going on? Could Zhang Shi really possess such mystical abilities? Even without giving any pointers, he could induce substantial improvement in another with just a momentary glance. Astonished, Vice School Head Ning hurriedly turned his attention back to his old friend's playing in an attempt to feel if it had reached a profound level when one of the zither strings suddenly snapped. Seemingly having realized something, his old friend's face turned as dark as the stormy clouds, and his hands had trembled to a stop as well. The usually composed Jiang Qingqin could no longer hold back his rage anymore, and a furious bellow reminiscent of the howling of a wolf echoed resoundingly in the courtyard. Zhang Xian. Screw you. What's wrong? Seeing his old friend flying into such a rage, Vice School Head Ning was stunned. It had been 500 years since he met Jiang Qingqin, and not once had he seen the latter losing his composure before. In fact, there was even one time when a direct disciple of his betrayed Jiang Qingqin, and Jiang Qingqin evicted him from his lineage without the slightest hint of anger on his face. Yet, at this instant, he was bellowing furiously at a freshman without any regard for his bearings. Just what was going on? Hua la! As soon as the melody came to a halt, the cranes in the sky descended back to the ground, and they called out delightfully, as if they had managed to achieve something incredible. School head, so did you achieve a breakthrough or not? Vice School Head Ning asked curiously. Demonic tunist was very unlike most other occupations, in the sense that its improvement was not strictly tied to one's cultivation or skills, but the deeper intent infused into the playing. Considering that Jiang Qingqin was able to charm so many divine cranes into dancing to his melody, it should mean that the level of his playing had risen significantly. Yet, for some reason, the intent he could feel from it didn't seem to have reached a higher level, so he couldn't help but feel a little doubtful. The hell with breakthroughs. Schoolhead Jiang stood up furiously as he glared at the young man in the distance, seemingly tempted to rush forward and tear the latter to shreds. Vice School Head Ning was unable to comprehend what was going on. You didn't achieve a breakthrough? Then why would the cranes? It was an unchanging rule that the number of cranes one could charm into dancing would correspond to one's level of capability. Yet, just a moment ago, he had seen the unbelievable sight of 16 cranes dancing harmoniously to a melody. Why, you ask? That's because he tamed my cranes. Jiang Qingqin looked as if he was going to explode. When he'd seen the other party's confident declaration, he had thought that the other party might just have some mystical means to help him achieve a breakthrough. Yet, the other party had used some unknown method to tame 10 of his cranes instead. Naturally, a tamed spirit beast would obey the orders of its master, so naturally, they flew at the other party's command. So, that's what happened. Hearing the story, Vice School Head Ning also nearly fainted. What we meant by 7 cranes dancing is a breakthrough in one's capability as a demonic tunist. What use is it for you to tame those cranes and make them dance at your command? If taming cranes and making them dance can represent one's capability as a demonic tunist, I would have found a few hundred cranes to do so long ago. Not expecting Jiang Qingqin to be furious even after he had done what the other party had asked him to, Zhang Xian frowned. Schoolhead Jiang, you said it yourself that you will give me the Phoenix Timber Core as long as I can make 7 divine cranes dance simultaneously to your melody. Now 16 of them have done so, it can't be that you are intending to renege on your promise, can it? Renege on my promise? Renege your head. Jiang Qingqin clenched his jaws so tightly together that it felt that his teeth might chip at any moment, and in that moment, he was on the verge of going berserk. Never ever have I seen someone as shameless as you. You are clearly just playing on my words, how can you still speak so brazenly? What I mean is for you to help me achieve a breakthrough, and yet, you ended up taming my cranes instead. You hadn't done what I asked you to, and you still dare to ask me for the Phoenix Timber Core? Not expecting that an esteemed master teacher would suddenly insult him like that, Zhang Xian harumphed furiously. Vice School Head Ning, please help us judge this matter. Didn't Schoolhead Jiang say that as long as 7 cranes flew simultaneously to his melody, he would give the Phoenix Timber Crane to me? Does being the schoolhead give one the right to take advantage of another like that? This. Vice Schoolhead Ning's lips twitched uncontrollably. Previously, his old friend had said these exact words, if you can allow my zither playing to charm 7 divine cranes to dance simultaneously, I will give my Phoenix Timber Core to you. Even though the implied meaning was to offer pointers such as to raise his old friend's level of playing, if one were to just look at the meaning of the words itself. Zhang Xian's interpretation wasn't wrong either. 16 cranes had danced in the air, so technically speaking, the other party had already fulfilled what had been asked of him. After a moment of hesitation, Vice School Head spoke slowly. Zhang Shi, what School Head Jiang means by 7 cranes is the level of his playing. This is jargon commonly used by demonic tunists. While you did manage to make 7 cranes dance simultaneously to his tune, the way you did was via the means of a beast tamer. Isn't that twisting the meaning of his request? You said that we are taking advantage of you, but you are the one who is bullying us. What Jiang Qingqin meant was the level of his playing, but you used the means of a beast tamer to resolve the problem instead. It doesn't work like that. It was only then that Zhang Xian finally realized what was going on. Ah! He had really thought that it would suffice as long as he could make the cranes dance to the other party's melody, and he had even asked once again to double-check it. But from the looks of it now, the matter wasn't as simple as he had thought. It was a communication error. Considering how valuable the Phoenix Timber Core was, he knew that it couldn't possibly be so easy. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang Xian said, "So, what you mean is for me to raise School Head Zhang's level of playing. You should have said so earlier. Since that's the case, may I know where the demonic Tunist school's library is? I would like to take a look in there." He could easily make 1,000 divine cranes dance in the air, but to raise the capability of a 6-star demonic Tunist, his knowledge was still far too lacking at the moment. He would have to first read some books in order to gain some understanding of the demonic Tunist occupation first. Our library? Hearing Zhang Xian ask about this matter again, Vice School Head Ning frowned in doubt. Yes. I have noticed a few things about School Head Zhang's current state, but there are still a few aspects that I am still unable to make sense of. I wish to browse through some books to verify certain details first before coming to a conclusion. Zhang Xian replied. The Library of Heaven's Path allowed him to see through the flaws of another, but it didn't provide him with the solution. Without any understanding of demonic Tunists, there was no way he could come up with a suitable solution to School Head Zhang's problem. Only after browsing through some books and reaching the same level as the other party or even higher would he be able to resolve the flaws that the other party had. However, he could not speak of this matter. Otherwise, he would have been kicked out under the suspicions of being a lunatic, so he could only make up a reason on the spot. This. Vice School Head Ning shot a glance at Jiang Qingqin, who was still furious about the happenings a moment ago. Vice School Head Ning sent the school head a telepathic message. Should we let him into our library? If my problem could be resolved just by browsing through books, do you think I would have been stuck at this bottleneck for over 500 years? Jiang Qingqin scoffed in skepticism. I will reject him then. Vice School Head Ning replied. Wait a moment. It isn't much of a problem to allow him into our library. How about we do this? Tell him that we will allow him to enter, but if he is still unable to induce a rise in the level of my playing, he can forget about obtaining the Phoenix Timber Core from me. Jiang Qingqin said. After a moment of hesitation, he added, also, he is only allowed to browse through the books. He isn't to cause any trouble or destruction in the demonic Tunist school. His original intention was to turn Zhang Xian down, but fearing that he might start demanding to take their examination or challenge their trial the next moment, he swiftly changed his mind and decided to accede to the latter's request instead. Since the purpose of a library was for one to enhance their knowledge, it wasn't a big deal to allow Zhang Xian in to browse through their books. But of course, that was assuming that the other party didn't cause any trouble. All right. Vice School Head Ning nodded before turning to Zhang Xian to relay those words. Hearing that he was allowed entry into the library, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble. The library is around the back, I'll take you over there. Vice School Head Ning said as he led the way forward. Since it would take some time for him to browse through the books, Zhang Xian had Sun Chang return to the manor first before following closely behind Vice School Head Ning. The demonic Tunist school's library was significantly smaller than the apothecary schools and physician schools. With his authority as a vice school head, Ning Hai was able to open the library to Zhang Xian without requiring a student token or academic credits on the other party's part. Thank you, Vice School Head Ning. Entering the library, Zhang Xian saw innumerable books stacked on shelves, and his eyes lit up. All right, I'll leave you be. If you have any requests, feel free to have any student relay it to me, Ning Hai said before bidding Zhang Xian farewell. Zhang Xian responded with a nod before turning his eyes back onto the huge collection of books before him. Possessing the ability to store books into the Library of Heaven's Path with just a glance, he didn't need to go through the trouble of flipping through the books like before. Focusing his gaze, the books on the shelves began appearing in the Library of Heaven's Path at an incredible speed. Just like the library in the Terpsichore school, there were hardly any students in here. However, this played just to Zhang Xian's liking. It would be a bother if others were to disturb him while he was taking in the books. 1 book, 2 books, 100 books, 200 books, 1,000 books, 2,000 books. In a few hours, Zhang Xian managed to successfully take in the several million books stored in the library. Compiling them, he formed the 1-star to 6-star Heaven's Path demonic tune arts. I should start reading them now. As there was no one around, Zhang Xian simply found a more spacious area and sat there. Immersing his consciousness into the Library of Heaven's Path, he began studying from the 1-star Heaven's Path demonic tune art. 6 hours later, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At that very moment, his understanding of demonic tunes had already reached 6-star, putting him on par or even above that of schoolhead Jiang Qingqin. Since I have attained the capability of a 6-star demonic tunist, I should make use of this chance to take the demonic tunist examination and obtain the 6-star emblem for myself. In order to make the advancement to a 6-star master teacher, he had to have 6-star emblems in 6 supporting occupations. At that moment, he had the 6-star emblems for blacksmith, physician, apothecary, and terpsichore, and he lacked another 2. Since he was already in the demonic tunist school, and he had some time to spare, it would be best for him to get this over with. Thus, he left the library, and after asking around, he headed for the demonic tunist aula, where the demonic tunist examination was held. Unlike the Tower of Physicians, the demonic tunist aula was a spherical building with an opening at the top, reminiscent of an observatory in his previous life. Those who intended to take the demonic tunist examination would sit at the very front row and play their instrument. The music would be amplified by the walls before echoing up into the heavens. Upon hearing the melody, the cranes residing in the school would fly over and dance merrily to the tune. After which, the examinee's level of playing would be assessed by the number of cranes drawn in. Just outside of the demonic tunist aula stood a young man who was currently snoozing on a table. He was probably the student worker in charge of facilitating the examinations in the demonic tunist aula. Walking up to the table, Zhang Xian clasped his fist and said, "Senior, I would like to take the demonic tunist examination." "You want to take the demonic tunist examination?" The young man rubbed his eyes and took a good look at Zhang Xian before asking, "What rank?" "I have never taken the examination before, so I intend to start from the 1-star examination," Zhang Xian replied. "Start from the 1-star examination? That's fine. Here are the music scores used for the 1-star examination. You have to choose a piece from here and play it for the examination. As long as you draw in a single crane with your playing, the demonic tunist aula will automatically award you a pass. You may start whenever you are ready," the young man said as he passed a file of music scores over. Only certain scores were allowed in the demonic tunist examinations. One had to display the capability of a 1-star demonic tunist through those specific scores in order to pass the 1-star examination. All right. After reading through the books in the library, Zhang Xian had also gained a rough understanding of the typical rules concerning the demonic tunist examinations, so he didn't have much trouble with that. However, there was another problem that he faced. That I don't have a zither with me, so may I borrow one? Zhang Xian asked awkwardly. The young man's eyes widened in disbelief. You don't have a zither. Why are you here if you don't even have a zither with you? A zither to a demonic tunist is like a sword to a swordsman or a brush to a painter. Yet, you wish to take the examination without even having one in your possession. You must be pulling my leg. To want to take the demonic tunist without a zither at hand, you really are one of kind. That. I remember that if an examinee doesn't possess a suitable zither, he can borrow one from the demonic tunist school. Zhang Xian said. With the books he had read, he had also gained a good grasp regarding the rules concerning the demonic tunist school as well. Based on what he knew, the demonic tunist school lent zither to examinees who needed them, and it wasn't against the rules to do so. It's true that you can borrow a zither from our school, but putting aside the fact that those zither are of subpar quality, they are also extremely old and worn. It's possible that the strings may snap just by exerting the slightest force on them, so your results will not be ideal if you use them. Are you certain about this? The young man asked doubtfully. The zither of the demonic tunist school were crafted to only have the bare basics required. Furthermore, they hadn't been used for many years, so they had already gotten rusty. It was questionable whether any of them could play a proper tune or not, and to use one in an examination, the chances of clearing the examination would be unimaginably low. This was precisely the reason very few people were willing to use it. I am certain. Zhang Xian nodded. It would be rather troublesome for him to head out now to purchase a zither, and it was unlikely that he would use it often. Thus, to spare himself the trouble, he decided to simply use the school's zither. All right then. Seeing that Zhang Xian had decided on the matter, the young man shook his head and walked into a room behind his table. Not too long later, he returned with an extremely worn-out zither and a few zither strings. Use it carefully. These are spare strings for you to replace with should any snap in the midst of your playing. You have 2 hours. If you fail to draw a single crane within the time limit, it will mean that you have failed the examination, the young man said. In truth, he didn't have much confidence in the fellow standing before him. How could there be a demonic tunist who didn't even possess a zither of his own? The fact that he didn't possess a zither likely meant that he lacked practice and that his skills were subpar. Occasionally, he would encounter such arrogant students who had an absurdly optimistic view of their own skills. Noted. Taking the zither, Zhang Xian paid the fee required for the examination before heading into the demonic tunist aula. The results for the demonic tunist examination were primarily determined by the divine cranes, so there was no need for complicated formations which consumed a great deal of energy to be inscribed onto the demonic tunist aula. On top of that, there were rarely any examinees around as well. In order to encourage more students to take the examination, the demonic tunist school decided to waive the payment of the academic credits and charge only a small amount of spirit stones for the examination. Walking to the center of the demonic tunist aula via a long passageway, Zhang Xian found himself surrounded by thick walls inscribed with unique patterns. Zither melodies seemed to resonate with those patterns, amplifying the sound many times over. However, and fortunately as well, this sound could only be heard by the divine cranes. There was not a single person in sight within the demonic tunist aula. Zhang Xian walked straight up to the round stage at the very center and placed the old zither on the small wooden table there. After which, he placed his finger on the music scores and imprinted them into his mind. It's quite a simple tune. Zhang Xian chuckled softly to himself. Having mastered the 6-star Heaven's Path demonic tune art, his level of playing was currently, at the bare minimum, on par with schoolhead Jiang. To him, playing the score prepared for the 1-star examination was nothing more than a walk in the park. I should give the zither a try first. Placing his finger on the zither, Zhang Xian plucked a string lightly, and a crisp sound reminiscent of a flowing river striking against a boulder sounded. Even though the sound produced by the zither was lacking in richness, it was at least still usable. All right, time to begin. Calming his mind, Zhang Xian began moving his fingers, and a beautiful melody began permeating the room. In the demonic Tunist school head office. He didn't cause any trouble, right? Seeing Vice School Head Ning walk into the office, Jiang Qingqin couldn't help but ask that, his tone tinged with unease. Vice School Head Ning shook his head. He didn't. Truthfully, he had also been a little worried previously. This was also the reason he had stood outside the library for several hours to ensure that nothing wrong was going to happen, before he eventually convinced himself that it was safe to leave. Jiang Qingqin heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. However, at this point, Vice School Head suddenly spoke up hesitantly with a deep frown. What's wrong? Jiang Qingqin hurriedly asked. Honestly, the rumors regarding that fellow were simply far too frightening. He couldn't help but pay careful heed to every single action the other party did. This morning, he left the library and headed to the demonic Tunist aula. If I'm not mistaken, I think he intends to take the demonic Tunist examination. Vice School Head Ning said. Jiang Qingqin's eyelids twitched as he asked, doesn't he know nothing about demonic Tune arts? Why is he taking the examination? I'm not too sure either. I was fearful that he would wreak havoc, so I secretly followed behind him and watched the situation from the outside. However, I saw the 15 cranes stationed for the examination flying into the demonic Tunist aula, and they didn't leave while I was there. With a tight frown, Vice School Head Ning recounted what he had seen. In order to ensure that the examination could be held at any time, the demonic Tunist aula had also reared 15 cranes of their own. They flew into the demonic Tunist aula. But even if that fellow is taking the 6-star demonic Tunist examination, 6 should be enough. For 15 of them to fly in, just what is he up to? Jiang Qingqin was perplexed. 15 cranes flew over when only 6 were needed. Something was definitely amiss. I'm also a little bewildered by this matter, that's why I came here to discuss it with you. Vice School Head Ning nodded. Discuss? This isn't the time for discussions. We have to rush over to take a look. Otherwise, who knows if that fellow will kill all of our cranes and roast them for his breakfast. Recalling the various bizarre feats that young man had accomplished, Jiang Qingqin's face darkened. He immediately stood up to rush out of his office, but at that moment, Jia. The office doors opened, and a head peeped in around the side. That. School Head Jiang, I wish to take the demonic Tunist examination, but there aren't enough cranes around. Can you lend some to me? Zhang Xian asked awkwardly. Jiang Qingqin frowned deeply upon hearing those words. How many do you intend to borrow? Beside him, Vice School Head Ning also widened his eyes in disbelief. There aren't enough cranes around. You have 15 cranes over there. Never has the demonic Tunist aula received a complaint about having insufficient cranes. Why are you the only exception? Just what in the world did you do to our cranes? At that instant, School Head Jiang and Vice School Head Ning felt extremely choked up within. Chapter 826, 5-star demonic Tunist. Returning back to the time when Zhang Xian first began playing in the demonic Tunist aula. As the melody was amplified by the walls, it gradually crescendoed before spilling out from the top. Chio. Not too long later, with a crisp call, a crane flew over. Under the influence of the beautiful melody, it began to dance delightfully. Great, one came. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Since a crane had come over, it meant he had cleared his 1-star demonic Tunist examination. Let me see if I can lure 2 over. Without changing the score, Zhang Xian adjusted his state of mind and executed the Heaven's Path demonic Tunist art 2 Dan. In an instant, the zither melody abruptly became sharp and desolate. Under normal circumstances, taking the examination of the next rank would require a change in the music score, but Zhang Xian was too lazy to head out to take it from the young man. In any case, this melody sounded rather pleasant, so he decided to go as far as he could for the moment. Switching from the heavens path demonic tunist art 1 dan to 2 dan, the intent behind Zhang Xian's playing suddenly grew much richer, and the sound he produced seemed to have become far more vibrant and resounding as well. Chio. However, the difference in the playing seemed to exert immense pressure on the dancing crane. As if it had suffered some kind of attack, it shrieked fearfully before abruptly plummeting from the sky and fainting. This. Astonished, Zhang Xian hurried forward to check on the state of the crane. After verifying that the crane had only lost consciousness, he heaved a sigh of relief. Could it be that this music score is unsuited for the 2-star demonic tunist examination? Zhang Xian scratched his head in confusion. No, that shouldn't be it. The core of a demonic tune art lies not in the score but in the intent behind it. Perhaps the rise in my intent doesn't complement the music score. If that's the case, it should work as long as I alter the score correspondingly. Music, just like the dance of a terpsichore, was nothing more than a medium. What stood at the core of demonic tunes was still the intent. Take painting for example, as long as one reached a profound level of proficiency in their painting skills, one would be able to relay one's intent no matter what one drew. The content of the painting itself served as nothing more than a medium. What Zhang Xian was currently experiencing was likely to be the disharmony between the richness of the intent he was relaying and the music score he was using. As long as he made adjustments accordingly, there shouldn't be any problem with it. Given his current eye of discernment and understanding of demonic tune arts, altering a music score wasn't too difficult for him. Before long, he had managed to alter the melody to suit his current intent. Thus, his fingers began plucking at the strings of the zither once more. As he had expected, not too long later, another 2 cranes flew into the demonic tunist aula and danced above him. Seeing that it worked, Zhang Xian chuckled softly in delight. Having passed the 2-star demonic tunist examination, Zhang Xian began adjusting his state of mind once more to evoke the intent of a 3-star demonic tunist when his fingers abruptly moved too forcefully, and a string snapped. As this was the first time he was playing a zither, he failed to keep his strength properly in check, resulting in this unfortunate event. Pada! Pada! Yet another 2 cranes fell to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. White foam was spilling from the edges of their mouths, and their eyes were rolled back, revealing only the whites. Somehow, they seemed to exude an aura of indignation, seemingly saying, "We have only come over in appreciation of your music, must you do this to us?" Ugh! The edges of Zhang Xian's lips twitched. He was only taking the 2-star demonic tunist examination, but 3 cranes had already fainted. He was probably the first one to do so ever since the establishment of the demonic tunist school. But it honestly wasn't intentional. The quality of this zither was simply too poor. I mustn't allow any problems to occur anymore. Determined to change his image, Zhang Xian assessed the score and the zither properly, and only after confirming that there wasn't any problem did he continue to play once more. As the music permeated the room, it didn't take too long for 3 cranes to fly into the demonic tunist aula. This time, Zhang Xian had made sure to control his strength properly, so he didn't hurt any of the cranes this time around. It was also the same for the 4-star examination as well. However, just as he was just about to make the transition into the 5-star level of playing, he accidentally exerted too much strength again, and another zither string snapped. The sharp dissonance from the snapping of the cranes left the 4 happily dancing cranes plummeting to the ground. The zither didn't pose much of a problem for the melodies he had played up to 3-star, but it seemed that it was swiftly approaching the limits of its durability at 4-star. Furthermore, Zhang Xian's overwhelmingly powerful soul paired with his lack of proficiency in zither playing made it extremely difficult to control his strength perfectly. However, knowing that there was no better zither he could borrow, he could only suppress his frustration and continue with the examination. The most he could do at the moment was just to be more careful than before. Thus, he began making preparations for his 5-star demonic tunist examination. Upon reaching 5-star, one could be already considered an expert of the demonic tunist school. Naturally, the difficulty of the exam was also far harder than those before. Gathering his focus, Zhang Xian began plucking at the strings, and a mesmerizing melody resounded throughout the room. The other cranes seemed to be a little apprehensive at approaching the melody this time around, so they didn't rush over immediately like before. Instead, it was 5 minutes into the playing when they finally fly over. Seeing 5 cranes dancing to his melody above, Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. Heaving a sigh of relief, he was just about to come to the end of the tune when pa-pa. The zither strings snapped once again, 2 this time. Under the abrupt dissonance, the 5 dancing cranes glared at Zhang Xian resentfully for an instant and chirped furiously before they followed in the footsteps of the others and plummeted to the ground. Looking at the 12 unconscious divine cranes lying in his surroundings, Zhang Xian felt the sight before him turning dark. He really didn't do it intentionally. That darn zither was simply far too lousy to harness the might of his soul. This was just like having an adult draw a child's bow. The slightest lapse in concentration might cause one to lose control of the weapon. It was fortunate that the souls of the cranes were only jolted, resulting in a temporary loss of consciousness. Otherwise, if he were to really cripple 12 of the demonic tunist school's cranes by taking the demonic tunist examination, schoolhead Jiang Qingqin just might skin him alive. Nevertheless, this situation had put him in a dilemma. While Zhang Xian could wake them up with his means as a soul oracle, his actions would have likely left a trauma in the crane's mind. Thus, in the short run at the very least, they would be unlikely to be drawn to his music. In other words, these 12 cranes were incapable of judging his level of playing at the moment. But nevertheless, I have successfully cleared the 5-star examination, so I am officially a 5-star demonic tunist now. I think I should just get to 6-star in one go. Zhang Xian thought. It would be too troublesome to return to the demonic tunist school another day, and Zhang Xian also knew that he had the capability to clear the 6-star demonic tunist examination at the moment as well. Even though the conditions might not be ideal, he still wanted to give it a try. Thus, he reconnected the snapped strings and adjusted his state of mind before playing once more. A clear and beautiful melody echoed amid the clouds, and 10 minutes later, 3 divine cranes flew over. Why are there only 3 cranes? Zhang Xian was certain that he had played at the level of a 6-star demonic tunist, but only 3 cranes had arrived. He couldn't help but be perplexed by the bizarre situation before him. He continued playing, hoping that more cranes would arrive soon, but even as he reached the end of his melody, no other cranes arrived around him. Thus, Zhang Xian could only give up and head out. It seemed like due to the limitations resulting from the quality of the zither, 5-star was the current limit of his performance. Most likely, he wouldn't be able to clear the 6-star examination that day. When Zhang Xian walked out, the young man at the entrance took a look at him, and upon seeing his depressed face, he chuckled lightly and said, "The demonic tunist examination wasn't that easy as you expected, was it?" "Indeed." Zhang Xian nodded. He had thought that clearing the 6-star demonic tunist examination would be a piece of cake to him, but the tools he had at hand was simply far too poor. It seemed like he would have to find an opportunity to purchase a zither that was suited for him before attempting the examination once more. "Do you know where I can purchase a better zither here?" Zhang Xian asked the young man. "If you want a truly good zither, you will have to craft it yourself. Only then will you be able to tailor it to your own needs and bring out your full potential," the young man explained. After a moment of contemplation, Zhang Xian nodded and replied, "Got it." Having read countless books, he knew a fair bit about the crafting of zither as well. However, he didn't have any time to spare for that at the moment, and there wasn't any good material at hand for that either. It seemed like that would have to wait then. "Where do I get the emblem from clearing the examination?" Zhang Xian asked. While it was regretful that he didn't clear the 6-star examination, it would still be good for him to obtain the 5-star emblem first. "Emblem? You cleared the 1-star examination?" The young man was surprised. Nevertheless, he raised his finger and pointed. "You can get your emblem over there. Just place your palm on the wall, and it will give you the corresponding emblem." Zhang Xian walked in the direction where the young man gestured toward, and soon, he found himself standing before a wall. It seemed to be a mechanism similar to the one in the ocean of weapons in the blacksmith school. He placed his palm on the wall. Tada! An emblem with 5 shining stars on it fell out. 5 star. The young man who had followed Zhang Xian, curious to see if he had really cleared the 1-star examination, was shocked to see the 5-star emblem. To clear the 1-star to 5-star examination in a single go, and to use the old zither from the school at that. Just how did he do it? If it was the young man himself, he wouldn't even be able to clear the 3-star examination with a worn zither like that. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the young man said, "You should have told me that you were going to take the 5-star examination. I could have had the cranes prepare themselves for it. Otherwise, even if your zither melody reaches the required level, if the cranes aren't around to hear it, or if there isn't a sufficient number of cranes around, you might have failed the examination." Insufficient number of cranes? Zhang Xian was stunned for an instant before a thought struck him. How many cranes does the demonic Tunist school have in total? 15, the young man replied. The school head has reared a couple of them as well, but they are situated a little far from the demonic Tunist Allah, so they aren't able to hear the zither melody and participate in the evaluation of the examination. 15. Zhang Xian suddenly realized what was going on. The reason there were insufficient cranes in his 6-star examination wasn't due to his lacking capability, but that 12 of them were lying unconscious on the ground, and the remaining 3 were already dancing above him. There were no more cranes left to judge his performance. That explained why the final 3 cranes were staring at him fearfully, seemingly tempted to flee, but mesmerized by the music, they couldn't bring themselves to do so. Can insufficient cranes lead to a situation where a qualified examinee fails? Zhang Xian asked. Indeed. The demonic Tunist Allah determines the examinee's capability based on the number of cranes that have gathered in the surroundings. Naturally, if there aren't sufficient cranes in the area, the demonic Tunist Allah can only deem it a failure. The young man replied. I see. Thank you for your enlightenment. Having understood what was going on, Zhang Xian hurriedly left for school head Zhang's office. Since there weren't sufficient cranes in the area, he would just have to borrow 3 more. But he couldn't help but be a little worried. Would school head Zhang be willing to lend his cranes to him? Chapter 827, Zither Dissension of the Cranes. Upon understanding what had happened, Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai's eyelids began twitching uncontrollably. To render 12 cranes unconscious in a demonic Tunist examination, you have truly made history today. After confirming that the cranes had only fainted, Jiang Qingqin heaved a sigh of relief before turning to Zhang Xian. The school zither are made out of ordinary materials, so they are usually only used in 1-star examinations. Beyond that, examinees are expected to bring their own zither along with them. I understand your situation. Why don't you use my zither to play here? If 6 cranes dance to your melody, I will apply for your 6-star demonic Tunist emblem personally. All right. Zhang Xian nodded. Since the other party had volunteered to apply for the 6-star emblem for him, he was spared an additional trip to the demonic Tunist Allah. Taking the zither from Jiang Qingqin's hands, he gently brushed his fingers past the strings, and a crisp sound reminiscent of top-quality jades clashing with one another sounded. A good zither this is. Zhang Xian commended. Just by listening to the sound produced by school head Zhang's zither, Zhang Xian could tell that it was innumerable times better than the old zither he had used previously. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xian adjusted his state of mind before beginning to play a light melody. A 1-star music score. Seeing how that fellow was playing a 1-star music score, both Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai shook their heads. However, just as they were about to speak, the cranes in the courtyard abruptly flew over. No more and no less, there were exactly 6 of them. It is actually possible to charm 6 cranes simultaneously with a 1-star music score. Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai nearly fainted from shock upon seeing that sight. A one-star music score, as the name suggested, was an elementary demonic tune, and it was limited in its prowess. To make an analogy, it was like a mortal battle technique. No matter how exquisitely one executed it, there was a cap on the prowess one could exert through it. Even if they were to play a one-star music score, it wouldn't be very effective. Yet, the young man before him had actually charmed 6 cranes into dancing to a one-star music score. Was this still the same fellow who knew nothing about 6 cranes or 7 cranes several hours ago? To become like this after a night of studying. Just what kind of monster are you? It is no wonder you were able to create such a storm in the Master Teacher Academy. Your talent is terrifying. What if he uses a 6-star music score? Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but wonder at the possibility. Since the young man was capable of bringing out the prowess of a 6-star demonic tunist with a 1-star music score, what would happen if he were to use a 6-star music score? Would 7 cranes soar into the sky instantaneously? Would he immediately make the breakthrough to become a 7-star demonic tunist? With such thoughts in mind, the eyes of the duo immediately lit up. Thus, at the end of Zhang Xian's current piece, Jiang Qingqin flicked his wrist and took out a music score. Zhang Shi, this is a 6-star music score, Tides of the Spring Moon. Give it a try. Zhang Xian took the music score and looked through it. As expected of a 6-star music score, it was indeed significantly more complex than the one he had played previously. However, the complexity also made it easier for him to draw out the richness of the intent he harnessed within. If he could only bring out 30% of the intent as a 6-star demonic tunist with the previous tune, he could bring out 100% with the one he was currently looking at, or perhaps, if he were to utilize the music score well, it could even go beyond that. Triang ting tang ting. After contemplating how he would play the tune, Zhang Xian laid his hands on the zither once more, and a melody carrying a faint trace of authority within it burst into the surroundings. As if a rising tide, it filled the entire courtyard. Hearing the zither melody, in a moment of daze, Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai seemed to see a beautiful full moon rising gradually from the water's surface. Amid the spring night, it brought a dim illumination to the world beneath as the darker side to the world sprung to life. The spring river coalesced with the calm sea, a brilliant moon rose amid the tides. Shimmering waves charged along with the tides into the horizon, and nary was there a sight devoid of moonlight. Chio! Chio! The melody grew more and more fleeting, and under the influence of the atmosphere, the cranes soared into the sky. 1 crane, 2 cranes, 3 cranes. In the blink of an eye, 6 cranes were already dancing above Zhang Xian, seemingly dancing along with the waves, mesmerized by the radiance of the moon. Who? Just as school head Jiang and vice school head Ning were enchanted by the melody as well, the remaining 10 cranes by the side called out simultaneously, and one of them soared up to join the dancing 6. But before that crane could even get close, another one leaped up to bite it and dragged it down to the ground. After which, a second crane spread its wings and prepared to fly up, but before it could lift off the ground, yet another crane rushed forward to stop it. In the blink of an eye, the remaining 10 cranes were tangled in a ferocious fight against one another, unwilling to let each other get ahead of them. In just a short moment, a rain of feathers had already fallen to the ground, and blood dyed the surroundings red. The cranes, which had lived harmoniously with one another for many years, were currently glaring hostilely at one another as if they were archenemies, dying to tear each other apart with their beaks. This. Jiang Qingqin's body couldn't help but shudder at that sight, and he uttered hoarsely, "This is the phenomenon which only one who has achieved an astounding grasp of demonic tunes can produce." Zither dissension of the cranes? The capability of a demonic tunist was determined by the number of cranes they could charm with the melody they played. However, if all of them were enticed into dancing, a situation might occur where they competed with one another for the slot. The divine crane was an extremely proud beast. If they were to see their companions dancing to a melody, they would be reluctant to make a move themselves, unless the demonic tunist's level of playing had reached an unbelievable level, inducing an uncontrollable urge within the cranes to dance to the zither melody. However, there was a limit to the slots. Thus, they could only tussle with one another to fight over it. Pang! 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 The 10 cranes fought with one another ferociously, determined to become the final one to join the group. After a long and bloodied battle, which resulted in a tragic grave of feathers on the ground, the victorious crane finally flapped its wings and joined the group unsteadily. But while it had won, it was a miserable victory. Its feathers had nearly all been torn off by its other companions, revealing the crimson flesh and skin beneath. The dance of a featherless crane, there was not one thing that was divine or graceful about it. At the end of the music piece, Zhang Xian finally recovered from the trance he had fallen into in the midst of his playing, and when he saw the bloodied mess from the tragic battle of the 10 cranes, he leaped in horror. What happened while I was playing the zither? Just as Zhang Xian was bewildered by the absurd sight before him, he suddenly saw Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai rushing to him with eyes gleaming in excitement. Does this mean that I have cleared the 6-star demonic tunist examination? Zhang Xian asked. If this doesn't constitute a pass, nothing will. Don't worry, I will apply for the 7-star demonic tunist emblem for you right now. Jiang Qingqin said, 7-star emblem? Zhang Xian was stunned. Indeed. Your comprehension of demonic tunes has definitely reached 7-star. Jiang Qingqin nodded in awe. To be able to induce the zither dissension of the cranes, his capability was even above that of ordinary 7-star demonic tunists. Upon hearing that the other party would help him apply for the emblem, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Thank you. With this, he would have 5 supporting occupations cleared. As long as he received another 6-star emblem and his cultivation reached the required level, he would be able to attempt the 6-star master teacher examination. On top of that, with his comprehension of demonic tunes reaching the level of a 7-star demonic tunist, it would be much easier for Zhang Xian to help Jiang Qingqin achieve a breakthrough in his level of playing as well. Activating his eye of insight, he began assessing Jiang Qingqin carefully, but a moment later, a peculiar expression surfaced on his face. What's wrong? Is it impossible for me to achieve a breakthrough? Seeing Zhang Xian's expression, school head Jiang couldn't help but be worried. He had thought that it would be easy for the other party to offer him pointers for him to achieve a breakthrough given the level of attainment the other party had achieved, but from the looks of it, he was probably being too optimistic. But that was no wonder. If it was that easy to make the breakthrough to a 7-star demonic tunist, he wouldn't have been stuck at a bottleneck for an entire 500 years. Seeing the disappointed look on school head Jiang's face, Zhang Xian hurriedly explained the situation. It's not that it's impossible, but you have already made the breakthrough. Your comprehension of demonic tunes has already reached the level of 7-star. I have already made the breakthrough. School head Jiang was stunned. Even vice school head Ning was dumbstruck after hearing Zhang Xian's words. Are you for real? It was just yesterday that I was still stuck at the attainment of 6 cranes, and I haven't really done anything since. How and when did I achieve the breakthrough? If I'm not mistaken, school head Jiang must have a transcendent view of worldly affairs. You view all matters with nonchalance, am I right? Zhang Xian asked. Vice school head Ning nodded in agreement. School head Jiang is a very composed person. He is able to retain his calm even in the face of a calamity. He had always been in awe of his old friend's ability to allow nothing to get to him. It is not without reason that demonic tunes have such a prefix. In order to truly understand the essence of the word demon, one has to experience the various vicissitudes of life: birth, death, illness, separation, nostalgia, desire, envy. These are the emotions that provoke us to strive for greater heights. Possessing a transcendent view of worldly affairs mean that your mind has stagnated. As such, how can you expect to reach greater heights? Zhang Xian asked. Jiang Qingqin fell into deep contemplation. 500 years ago, he had undergone a major event which allowed him to view most affairs with nonchalance. He had thought that he had achieved enlightenment, but from the looks of it, that wasn't the case. Living in the mortal world, it is only normal for us to be involved in and affected by worldly affairs. To pay no heed to them and even avoid thinking about them, that isn't transcending beyond mortal affairs but escapism. If you have already chosen to escape from everything you faced, how can you possibly pave your way forward to accomplish a breakthrough? Zhang Xian questioned. You're right. Jiang Qingqin's face paled in realization. The other party was right. To pay no heed to worldly affairs was not enlightenment but escapism. There are many experts who would immerse themselves within the vicissitudes of life and experience all kinds of emotions so as to find the impetus to achieve a breakthrough. Yet, you chose to do the opposite. You secluded yourself in your residence, choosing to involve yourself in nothing at all. That is the reason you have been stuck at a bottleneck for the past 500 years. Zhang Xian sighed deeply in lamentation. Yesterday, by taming your cranes, I managed to evoke your anger, resulting in a ripple in your stagnated state of mind, which became the impetus for you to overcome your bottleneck. In other words, you achieved a breakthrough yesterday. It was just yesterday that he didn't understand the true difference between 6 cranes and 7 cranes, thinking that it would do as long as he convinced the 7th crane to join in the dance. Who could have known that an unintentional act on his part would actually allow the other party to achieve a breakthrough? It was indeed a blessing in disguise. If he hadn't experienced such a matter personally, it would have been hard for him to believe that there could be such a coincidence in the world. After hearing the lecture, Jiang Qingqin closed his eyes for a brief moment, and the days he had spent over the past 500 years flashed through his mind in an instant. The next moment, he stood up, clasped his fist, and bowed. Determination and gratitude could be seen in his eyes. Zhang Shi, thank you for your guidance. From today onward, in the path of a demonic tunist, you shall be my teacher. This. How can I? Not expecting that the esteemed head of the demonic tunist school would suddenly acknowledge him as his teacher, Zhang Xian was astonished for an instant before swiftly waving his hands. It is proficiency and not seniority that matters in the path of learning. I might have been studying demonic tunes for a far longer time than you, but my comprehension of it still isn't as deep as yours. Your words today have answered a doubt that I have harbored for more than 500 years. Until you are willing to acknowledge me, I will not rise from my bow. Jiang Qingqin said persistently. This. All right then. Seeing the determination and earnestness in the other party's actions, Zhang Xian eventually relented. With his acceptance, the library of heaven's path in his mind jolted lightly, and a golden page materialized. However, this wasn't the time to be looking at it. Zhang Xian hurried forward to help school head Jiang up. Teacher, I will chop down the phoenix timber tree now and procure its core for you. As for its trunk, I will craft a suitable zither for you. School head Jiang said. I'll be troubling you. Zhang Xian nodded. After which, they chatted a while longer, and Zhang Xian offered Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai some pointers regarding demonic tunes which benefited the duo greatly. 2 hours later, with the phoenix timber core, which Jiang Qingqin had just had a student procure for him, in hand, Zhang Xian clasped his fist and bade the duo farewell. However, the moment he stepped out of the demonic tunist school, a thought suddenly struck him, and his face warped in shock. Damn it! I was too concerned with the demonic tunist examination that I forgot about my appointment with her. Gathering the books, studying, and taking the demonic tunist examination. By the time he was done with all that, it was already daybreak. Yesterday, Luo Ruoxin had told him that she would look for him later in the night, but it was already way beyond the agreed timing. Thus, Zhang Xian hurriedly returned to his manor, and Sun Chang hurried forward to report to him. Young master, Lady Luo came last night to look for you, but after learning that you weren't around, she left. Did she say anything? Zhang Xian asked. Nothing at all. Sun Chang shook his head. Nothing. Zhang Xian scratched his head in bewilderment. Luo Ruoxin had said that she would look for him last night, but she ended up leaving without saying anything. What was she up to? I will head over to her residence to take a look, Zhang Xian said. Returning to the Master-Teacher Academy, he found Luo Ruoxin's residence, and after asking around, he learned that the other party wasn't in, so he could only return to his manor helplessly. Even though he did feel a little stifled within due to missing Luo Ruoxin's appointment, considering that the latter seemed to have some important matter for him, it was likely that she would return another day. Thus, there no need for him to feel so conflicted over this issue. In any case, his efforts the previous night had brought him the Phoenix Timber Core, so it wasn't really a wasted trip anyway. As soon as he obtained the Grand Intermittence Grass and the other medicinal herbs from the old elders, he would be ready to forge the Grand Intermittence Pill. Under the nourishment of the Earth Vein's spirit essence, even though it wasn't sufficiently potent to heal Wei Ruyan's body, it was still able to prevent the state of her physical body from declining any further at the very least. Besides, it would take some more time before the 10-leafed flower nurtured her soul to a satisfactory level, so there was no rush at all. When Zhang Xian returned to his manor once more, he heaved a sigh of relief. Now that he finally had some time to himself, he suddenly recalled a fellow who he had been neglecting over the past few days, Byzantium Helios Beast. It had been around 8 days since he had captured that fellow on Leiyuan Peak, but he hadn't had any time to interrogate it properly yet. Since he finally had some time at hand, it would be good to coax some news on the otherworldly demons from it. Considering that we are in the center of the city, in the vicinity of the Master-Teacher Academy, I should set up a formation to conceal that fellow's aura. Otherwise, I might be noticed by others when I release the otherworldly demon puppets on it. The manor Zhang Xian was currently residing in was enormous, so there was more than sufficient space to deal with the Byzantium Helios Beast here. However, considering that they were in the middle of a bustling city instead of some remote mountain, it was still imperative to take some precautions so as to ensure that no one would learn of the otherworldly demon puppets. Not to mention, they were extremely close to the Master-Teacher Academy as well. Considering the sharp senses that Saint Realm experts possessed, it was best not to take his chances. He was currently a 4-star formation master, so he was familiar with quite a few grade 4 formations. After some searching about, he finally found a suitable one. This aura sealing formation should do. The aura sealing formation served to isolate all auras within a set area from the rest of the world. As long as a Saint Realm expert didn't consciously attempt to peek in the area, it would be hard for them to notice what was within the aura sealing formation. While it was only a grade 4 pinnacle formation, it was currently the best formation capable of concealing auras that he could come up with. Even though he had experience setting up grade 6 hidden formation in the underground chamber, the formation was incapable of concealing auras or even sound. Given the current circumstances, the aura sealing formation was much more useful. I should begin. Taking a swift look at the courtyard, Zhang Xian swiftly deduced the ideal manner in which he should set up his formation before abruptly throwing several hundred formation flags out at once. Hoo hoo hoo. The flags soared through the air and landed in their corresponding locations simultaneously. Wang! The formation came to life. 100 flags of void sealing. Alright. Seeing that the formation had been set up, Zhang Xian flicked his wrist and took out the myriad anthive nest, and the next moment, a massive ape saint beast appeared on the ground. After being trapped for over a week, the Byzantium Helios beast was finally released from its confines. Chapter 828, Byzantium Helios Beast. Found, faction leader. After Zhang Shi left school head Zhang's residence, he returned straight to the manor which King Huai gave him. After which, he headed to Luo Shi's residence but left shortly after. Since then, he hasn't left his manor. In the courtyard of a vast residence sitting at the very center of the Formation Master School, a young lady reported to a beautiful silhouette before her. Dong Xian turned around and asked, "He hasn't left his manor?" Ever since the affairs at the physician school, she had been sending her men to trail Zhang Xian so as to uncover his weaknesses, but the latter had been so busy that it was hard to even catch a glimpse of him. So far, she still hadn't received anything that she could use against him. Yes. The other lady nodded in response. All right, you may leave now. Dong Xian waved her hands casually before placing them behind her back. A slight spring breeze tugged at her robe, highlighting her mesmerizing figure. She lived up to her name as one of the top beauties of the academy. Her posture and gestures carried a unique charm to them. If Hu Yao Yao was a thorny rose, she would be an elegant lily, cold but alluring. One has to enter the tiger's den to find a cub. If I wish to uncover that fellow's weakness, I will probably have to make a move myself. Dong Xian's eyebrows shot up. She was an extremely careful and meticulous person, and she didn't like to depend on second-hand news. Even though she had heard many things about Zhang Xian from Hu Yao Yao and the others, she still held her reservations toward the authenticity of their words, choosing to devote significant resources to investigating him herself. However, perhaps it might be due to Zhang Xian being far too careful, her subordinates had been unable to obtain any useful intelligence on him yet. It seemed like she would have to make a move herself if she wished to find anything useful. All right, I should head over to take a look. Switching to an ordinary robe, Dong Xian flitted out of her residence. She had already tasked someone with uncovering the location of the manor which King Huai had given Zhang Xian, so she knew its exact location. It wasn't located too far from the Master Teacher Academy, so she arrived at her destination within a few minutes. It seems like there are quite a few formations set up here. However, you are being too naive if you think that this can stop me. Chuckling lightly, Dong Xian infiltrated the manor. She was one of the top grade 5 students in the Master Teacher Academy, a transcendent mortal 9-dan chrysalis realm expert. On top of that, she was the direct disciple of Qin Qingshuan, the head of the Formation Master School. The formations in the manor might have been able to stop 4-star and 5-star formation masters in their tracks, but to hinder her passage? Dream on. Slowly advancing carefully in the manor, Dong Xian soon found herself standing before a vast courtyard. A formation was currently active in the courtyard. It created a thick layer of mist around the courtyard, preventing one from seeing what was within. Dong Xian recognized it with a single glance. This is a 4-star pinnacle aura sealing formation. The purpose of the formation is to conceal one's aura. Could it be that his weakness is hidden within here? Dong Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. The aura sealing formation didn't have much practical use other than concealing one's aura. For the other party to set up such a formation within his manor, there was no doubt that he was trying to hide something. I must find a way to get through the aura sealing formation to take a look. Dong Xian clenched her fists tightly in agitation. Her enemy's secret, and possibly his greatest weakness as well, was standing right before her. She couldn't let this opportunity slip through her fingers. Gritting her teeth ferociously, she began analyzing the formation carefully with her beady eyes. It isn't too difficult to decipher a grade for aura sealing formation, but if I make a wrong move, I might end up shifting the formation flags and cause some unexpected changes in the formation. As a 6-star formation master, Dong Xian was more than able to overcome an aura sealing formation. However, the tricky part was to sneak in without the other party noticing. To do so, she would have to study the formation thoroughly and plan out her moves carefully. With a swift movement, she leaped onto a lush tree in the corner of the courtyard to conceal herself. After which, she took out a geomantic compass and began making her calculations based on the spiritual energy flow in the surroundings. Li San, Sun Wu. One Dong Xian swiftly performed her calculations, and the more calculations she made, the more awed she became. The person who set up this aura sealing formation is a person of great capability. He managed to align the formation perfectly with the entire manor, turning the two into one entity. Even I am unable to achieve such a feat. Even though the formation before her was only at grade 4 pinnacle, it was perfectly aligned with the surroundings, drawing out prowess that only grade 5 formations could possess. To be able to bring out such prowess in a grade 4 formation, the other party's capability as a formation master could only be above hers. But ultimately, there's still a limit to how powerful a grade 4 formation can be. No matter how well he might have set it up, as long as I find the life gate, I will still be able to get in easily. Dong Exin chuckled softly in confidence. Her talent in formations were extraordinary, and this was also the reason the head of the Formation Master School had taken her in as his disciple. The formation might be far beyond the normal scope of an ordinary grade 4 formation, but due to its fundamental limits, she was still able to decipher it easily. Taking a deep breath, she was just about to confirm the location of the life gate and sneak in when the ground suddenly shook intensely. A violent energy burst out from the formation. It felt as if a powerful expert was trying to break the formation from within to escape. Boom! 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 Dong Exin swiftly hid herself before she heard yet another powerful shockwave striking the aura ceiling formation. Under the immense force, Pili Pala, the formation began to crumble. To be able to destroy a grade 5 formation with brute force, the person trapped inside the formation must be at least a Saint Realm expert. Dong Exin narrowed her eyes in astonishment. While the aura ceiling formation was meant to be a grade 4 pinnacle formation, the person who had set it up had done it so impeccably, complementing it perfectly with the surroundings, that it harnessed the prowess only grade 5 formations should possess. For a grade 5 formation to crumble under brute force, it could only mean that the person trapped within was an unbelievably powerful expert. Boom! Amidst her shock, Dong Exin saw an enormous figure emerging from the crumbling formation. This is Senior Byzantium Helios. Her body immediately stiffened from sheer astonishment. As a grade 5 student, she had been fortunate enough to meet the tamed beast of the old principal several times. But wasn't he kidnapped by the otherworldly demons? How can he be here? Or could it be? The thought that just flashed through Dong Exin's mind filled her with unprecedented horror. You intend to escape? Vicious, take it down. In the next instant, a nonchalant voice suddenly sounded in the courtyard, and an overwhelming killing intent permeated the area. Pada! Before Senior Byzantium Helios could even react, he had already fallen back to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. It's the otherworldly demonic tribe. Dong Exin was so frightened that she didn't even dare to move in the slightest. The rest of you, get him. Pummel him to death. Following which, the nonchalant voice sounded once more, and 20 Saint Realm otherworldly demons abruptly appeared and charged furiously towards Senior Byzantium Helios. Pili Pala. Fists and kicks sunk into the flesh of the helpless Senior Byzantium Helios, and in the blink of an eye, he was already bruised all over. He lay on the floor twitching uncontrollably, and it felt like he could breathe his last at any moment. Covering her mouth firmly to stifle her gasp, Dong Exin felt her blood run cold. In that instant, she dared not to make the slightest movement or noise for fear of being noticed. The enemy side had 20 Saint Realm otherworldly demons, and even Senior Byzantium Helios wasn't a match for them. If she were to be noticed, there was no doubt that she would be slaughtered in an instant. It fainted again. Through the gaps of the leaves, she saw Zhang Xian walking leisurely towards Senior Byzantium Helios and harumphing coldly. He flicked his wrist, and the massive Senior Byzantium Helios abruptly disappeared from sight. After which, he looked at the broken formation and fell into deep thought. This formation is too weak. It seems like I should head to the Formation Master School to learn a more formidable formation. Zhang Xian muttered under his breath before walking back to his room. Even after Zhang Xian had disappeared from sight, Dong Exin didn't dare to move, fearing that the other party might return abruptly. It was only 6 hours later, when dusk had finally set in, that she dared to move her stiffened body and swiftly flee from the manor. The matter she had seen that day was truly huge. It was so huge that it terrified her to her very core. It was no wonder Zhang Xian was so talented, skilled in every aspect. It turned out that he was really not a human. It was said that the royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe possessed the capability to disguise themselves as humans, and not even Saint Realm master teachers would be able to tell the difference. When she'd first heard of it, she had thought of it as utter nonsense. How could such a convenient ability exist in the world? But to think that it would actually be true. For an otherworldly demon to disguise itself as a master teacher and even successfully infiltrate the Master Teacher Academy. This news would cause not only a huge uproar in the Master Teacher Academy but the Master Teacher Pavilion as well. Realizing the implications behind this issue, Dong Xian rushed straight to the Master Teacher Academy as fast as she could. This won't do, I can't let his scheme succeed. I have to report this matter to the Academy this instant. This was no longer something that she, as a student, had the power to deal with. She had to inform the top echelons of the Master Teacher Academy as soon as possible. But, given how astounding this matter was, would anyone believe her? After all, that Zhang Xian had earned the deep trust of School Head Mo, School Head Zhao, School Head Wei, and just a few hours ago, even that of School Head Wei. On top of that, he was also a close friend of Pavilion Master Mo, and he seemed to have an amicable relationship with Luo Shi from the headquarters too. If she were to accuse him of being an otherworldly demon without concrete evidence, not only would others not believe her, she might even be stripped of her master-teacher license on the grounds of slandering her own peers. I should first discuss this matter with teacher. Dong Xian thought. As the person who had founded the Dong Xian faction and led it to become one of the strongest student factions in the academy, she was by no means a reckless or foolish person. Even though it had only been days since Zhang Xian had enrolled at the academy, he had already won the trust of several dozen thousand students along with 4 school heads and Pavilion Master Mo. Her current standing was in no way on par with his. Under the circumstances, since there was no concrete evidence to back her words, she was in a definite disadvantage on this matter. It was highly likely that the tables would turn on her, and perhaps, her life might even be threatened. Thus, it was imperative for her to act cautiously and even more carefully for this matter. But even if teacher were to trust me, his standing is still beneath that of school head Zhao. That won't be sufficient to overthrow Zhang Xian. A figure suddenly surfaced in Dong Xian's mind. Wait, I can look for school head Lu Feng. While it was true that her teacher Chen Qingxuan, the head of the Formation Master School, did possess immense prestige in the Master Teacher Academy, his standing was still beneath that of Zhao Bingxiu. If Zhao Bingxiu were to oppose to the motion that her teacher raised, it was highly likely that the entire matter might fall through. However, things would be different if she could rally the stand-in principal, Lu Feng, to her side. Lu Feng and Zhang Xian had a hostile relationship, so Lu Feng might be inclined to listen to her words. I should first find teacher and have him take me to school head Lu Feng. Dong Xian gritted her teeth in determination. The implications behind this matter were simply too huge. The matter wouldn't just resolve itself if she only revealed what she had seen. She had to gather sufficient power on her side first. And at this very moment, the person who wielded the greatest say in the academy was indubitably school head Lu Feng. On top of that, the other party had a grudge against Zhang Xian, so if she were to reveal this news to him, it was likely that the other party would side with her. Who? Having made up her mind, she headed toward the school head office of the Formation Master School without any hesitation. Chapter 829, I am the old principal's tamed beast. Not knowing that Dong Xian had already discovered the secret regarding the Byzantium Helios beast, Zhang Xian was currently making his way over to the Formation Master School. Even though he had set up his aura sealing formation impeccably, the formation's grade was ultimately still too low. While the Byzantium Helios beast was tightly squeezed inside the myriad anthive nest, it was still a saint beast with incredible regenerative capability. In just a few days, it had mostly recovered from the wounds it had sustained previously. Thus, as soon as it was released in the courtyard, it exerted its full might to break the formation so as to escape. It was fortunate that Zhang Xian had expected such a situation and had prepared in advance for it. Through utilizing the strength of Vicious and the otherworldly demon puppets, he had managed to subdue it eventually. However, that wasn't a feasible solution in the long run. Zhang Xian had no choice but to take the Byzantium Helios beast out in order to interrogate it on the affairs of the otherworldly demons, but if he couldn't trap it properly with his formation, it might just end up escaping while his guard was down one day. Furthermore, the shattering of the aura sealing formation meant that it was possible for the aura of the otherworldly demon puppets to escape, and he might potentially draw in the Saint Realm experts of the Academy as a result of it. If that were to happen, it would be difficult for him to explain himself. After much contemplation, Zhang Xian decided that he should first study a higher grade formation just to be safe. Thus, he left his manor, and before long, he was already in the Formation Master School. I should start with the library first. After confirming the location of the library from the passers-by, he found a small gazebo in its vicinity, sat down in there, and drew his soul out. The Formation Master School was ranked third in the entire Master Teacher Academy. There was a constant flow of people going in and out of its library, a sight that one would never see in the Terpsichore School or the Demonic Tunist School. It didn't take too long for Zhang Xian to get into the library. As he was currently a 4-star Formation Master, he decided to skip the books in the lower levels and head right up to the 5th floor. Walala! As his gaze swept over the shelves, book after book swiftly appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. In 4 hours, he had already finished taking in all of the books on the 5th and 6th floors, and he compiled them to form the 5-star and 6-star Heaven's Path formation art. After he was done, he quickly returned his soul to his body and began studying. When Zhang Xian finally opened his eyes once again 2 hours later, there was a bright gleam in them. At that very moment, his comprehension of formations had reached the equivalent of a 6-star pinnacle formation master. Even against the head of the Formation Master School, he was confident that he would be able to stand his ground. Should I take the 6-star Formation Master examination while I am here? Standing up, Zhang Xian contemplated with his right hand stroking his lower jaw. If he could receive a 6-star Formation Master emblem as well, he would have cleared one of the main prerequisites to the 6-star Master Teacher examination. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang Xian decided against it. Forget it, I have been taking too many examinations recently. If I continue at this pace, I might just end up drawing doubts upon myself, and that would be troublesome. For the time being, I should focus my effort on interrogating the Byzantium Helios beast. He had taken quite a lot of examinations in recent days: blacksmith, terpsichore, physician, apothecary, demonic tunist. The matter had caused a huge uproar in the Master Teacher Academy. Since his cultivation was still too low to take the 6-star Master Teacher examination, it might be good for him to slow down for the time being. Once the current heat had dissipated, he could continue as he pleased. In any case, his knowledge couldn't possibly escape from him. It would make no difference whether he took the examination now or later. Having made up his mind, Zhang Xian returned straight to his manor. He walked directly to his courtyard and took out a couple of formation flags to set up a grade 6 breath isolation formation. When he was finally done, he took a look at the work he had just achieved and nodded in satisfaction. Unlike other grade 6 formations, which were impossible to successfully set up without reaching Chrysalis Realm or even Half-Saint, the breath isolation formation could be set up even by those whose cultivation wasn't up to par. Zhang Xian had done some calculations, and he had realized that even if the Byzantium Helios beast was in its peak state, it would still be unable to break the formation. With this, Zhang Xian would no longer have to worry about anything escaping from it. Who? Zhang Xian stepped into the formation and deployed the otherworldly demon puppets in the surroundings. After this was done, he released the Byzantium Helios beast. You. If you want to kill me, just do it. By this point, the Byzantium Helios beast had already awoken from its previous unconsciousness. It lay motionless on the ground as it glared at the young man before it with deep resentment. As the tamed beast of the old principal, when had it ever suffered like that before? If only it wielded sufficient power in its hands, it would have surely ripped the fellow before it into shreds. If it was my intention to kill you, I would have already done so on Leiyuan Peak. There would have been no need for me to keep you alive until now. Zhang Xian waved his hands coldly. If you don't want to suffer, you'd better reveal your motive for harming the 30,000 examinees and the mastermind behind you. If you do so, I can consider sparing your life. Otherwise, believe me, I will make every single day of yours a living hell. This fellow was unlike the ancient ape on the cloud mist ridge. Soul search was not an infallible technique. The main reason Zhang Xian had been able to successfully use it on the ancient ape was due to the latter's fear of him, and the unstable state of mind made it easier to peer into his memories. On the other hand, the Byzantium Helios beast had a headstrong and loyal personality. Considering how it hadn't spoken a word despite being pummeled again and again, there was a good chance that soul search may fail on it. If that was the case, Zhang Xian would lose the only lead he had on the otherworldly demons. Honestly speaking, he also couldn't help but feel deeply helpless against this fellow. Make my life a living hell. Do you think that I'm afraid of that? The Byzantium Helios beast roared furiously. My master was killed by otherworldly demons like you. You want me to submit to the likes of you? Not in a million years. His master had devoted his life to fighting against the otherworldly demons, and having accompanied by his master's side for many years, the Byzantium Helios beast had inherited his moral compass. It had a clear notion of what it should do and what it shouldn't do. If it were to side with the otherworldly demons, it would be too ashamed to continue living in this world. Rather than live without honor and dignity, it would rather die. Your master was killed by otherworldly demons? Zhang Xian frowned. What do you mean by that? The Byzantium Helios beast harumphed. Your deception is meaningless. You are royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe, right? Only the royalty can conceal their aura perfectly and disguise themselves as master teachers without catching the notice of others. Disguise as master teachers? Zhang Xian burst into laughter. He was intending to interrogate the other party on the whereabouts of the otherworldly demons, but to think that he would end up being framed by the other party instead. Do you think that you can prove your innocence by fabricating such lies? To control so many spirit beasts to attack the examinees of the Master Teacher Academy, even a fool can tell that you have malicious intentions in mind. Who else can you possibly be working for if not the otherworldly demons? Zhang Xian sneered coldly. Attack the examinees? Malicious intentions? The short-tempered Byzantium Helios beast's face turned scarlet upon hearing the accusation. I was invited by school head Mo to facilitate an examination for the examinees. How is that a malicious intention? Facilitate an examination? You had the myriad anthive queen to track down the whereabouts of the students so that the spirit beasts could lay a trap for them to step into. Can that even be called an examination? If I hadn't discovered it in time, who knows how many students would have lost their lives. Zhang Xian sneered disdainfully. Seeing that the other party was trying to soil its honor, the Byzantium Helios beast explained indignantly, those spirit beasts were captured by school head Mo, and I had already warned them against killing any of the examinees. The purpose of the examination was to dampen their arrogance and have them understand that the strength of master teachers lies in their collectivity, not the individual. Even at death, it would die an honorable beast. It wouldn't allow anyone to frame it of anything. There's such a way of going about it too. Zhang Xian was stunned. At this point, he suddenly couldn't help but recall the situation back when he was still on the Leiyuan Peak, when he encountered 200 master teachers surrounded by 400 spirit beasts. While the situation seemed perilous then, thinking back, it was indeed bizarre how there were no casualties. Could it really have been part of the examination? If that was the case, could it be that he had misunderstood the Byzantium Helios beast? You are acquainted with school head Mo? Zhang Xian asked. Of course. I am the tamed beast of the Master Teacher Academy's old principal. How could I possibly not know who school head Mo Zhu is? The Byzantium Helios beast said with clenched jaws. You can kill me, but don't even dream of prying my mouth open. The tamed beast of the old principal. Zhang Xian's mouth twitched upon hearing those words. During his time in the Master Teacher Academy, he had that the old principal's tamed beast had disappeared, and back then, he had thought that it was the doing of otherworldly demons. To think that the culprit would be him instead. Oblivious to Zhang Xian's shock, the Byzantium Helios beast roared resolutely, indeed. My master might have already left me, but there is no way that I will side with otherworldly demons. Impossible. Side with otherworldly demons. Are you saying that I am an otherworldly demon? Zhang Xian asked with a bizarre look on his face. Is that not it? To be protected by the will of an otherworldly demon expert and so many otherworldly demon puppets. Who else can you be if not an otherworldly demon? The Byzantium Helios beast spat. This. Glancing at the otherworldly demon puppets in the surroundings, Zhang Xian blinked his eyes in a daze. If one were to see so many otherworldly demon puppets all of the sudden without knowing of the inside story, they would indeed assume that to be the case. It seemed like the entire matter was just a huge misunderstanding. He had thought that the Byzantium Helios beast was a subordinate dispatched by the otherworldly demons to harm the Master Teacher Academy's examinees, and the other party thought that he was royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe. What the heck? If he'd known this was a misunderstanding, he would never have been so harsh on the Byzantium Helios beast. Taking a look at the other party's state, he didn't even look like a beast anymore. Recalling the sight of how his puppets had pummeled the other party viciously just earlier that afternoon, Zhang Xian's lips twitched uncontrollably. It seemed like, somehow, things had gotten out of hand. In terms of standing, the tamed beast of the old principal was comparable to a school head. To pummel the other party viciously, leaving it on the verge of death multiple times. If others were to learn of it, he would be a goner. The entire academy would be raising their pitchforks toward him, hunting him down to the ends of the world. Currently, there are only two solutions before me. One is to kill the other party and ensure that no one learns that I am the culprit. The other is to tame it and make it my tamed beast. Otherwise, it will surely rally others against me as soon as I set it free. Zhang Xian's mind swiftly whirred into action upon realizing that this was a huge misunderstanding. Given the other party's standing, even if Zhang Xian were to prove that he wasn't an otherworldly demon, there was no way it would be willing to let Zhang Xian off the hook just because he had left it on the brink of death multiple times. If he were to release it, there was no doubt that he would be in for a round of misfortune. The easiest and safest way out of this was to just kill the other party. I can't. I should try the second solution instead. It was admirable and touching how the Byzantium Helios beast refused to budge even in the face of death, choosing to take the secrets of humanity with it to its grave instead. It was one thing if Zhang Xian was unaware of it, but now that he had learned of it, he would surely regret it for life if he were to kill the other party. Taming might be difficult, but Zhang Xian felt that it was the only acceptable solution out of this mess. Having made up his mind, Zhang Xian exhaled deeply before turning to the Byzantium Helios beast and said, I am not from the otherworldly demonic tribe. I am a real master teacher. Stop putting on an act here, do you think that I'll believe you? The Byzantium Helios beast didn't believe Zhang Xian at all. If the other party wasn't an otherworldly demon, how could he have so many otherworldly demon puppets protecting him? On top of that, the will of an otherworldly demon expert had even pledged loyalty to him. Don't even think that you can fool me that easily just because I am a beast. Zhang Xian shook his head and sighed. Consider our plight, is there really a need for me to lie to you? I really am not an otherworldly demon. There is a huge misunderstanding between us. The next moment, the aura that Zhang Xian exuded abruptly changed. In that very instant, his presence felt like an inviolable deity from the heavens, a figure whose authority one could never challenge. This is. Sensing the aura, the Byzantium Helios beast was bewildered briefly. Then, a thought struck it, and its eyes immediately widened in astonishment. You are a celestial master teacher. Chapter 830, Byzantium Helios beast acknowledges its master. The old principal had once told him that the most formidable master teacher was the celestial master teacher. Acknowledged by the heavens, the celestial master teacher commanded an aura that compelled others to acknowledge them as their teacher. In history, only Kong Shi had reached such a peak before. Could the man before him be one as well? That's right. Zhang Xian nodded. Do you think that a celestial master teacher can be an otherworldly demon? The Byzantium Helios beast hurriedly shook its massive head. Of course not. The celestial master teacher was a master teacher acknowledged by even the heavens, an existence on par with Kong Shi. How could he possibly an otherworldly demon? Those two were from two completely different worlds. Seeing that the other party had recognized his identity, Zhang Xian's face immediately darkened. Even the heavens have recognized me, but you showed me no respect at all, assaulting me even. Do the heavens mean nothing to you? Does Kong Shi mean nothing to you? If he wanted to tame the other party, he had to claim the moral high ground first. Thus, he had to pin the blame on the other party. Besides, it was a fact that the other party was the first to make the move. Had Zhang Xian not possessed several means up his sleeves, their roles at this very moment would have been reversed. The Byzantium Helios beast's face flushed crimson. Back then, it was just thinking of scaring the arrogant freshman before it to instill humility into him, but who could have known that the other party was actually a celestial master teacher? In the whole of history, there had only been one celestial master teacher, Emperor Kong Shi. Even the 72 sages, his direct disciples, had never achieved such a height. This went to show how fearsome an existence a celestial master teacher was. In other words, it had attempted to assault a master teacher who was innumerable times more noble than the old principal. It was no wonder the other party had taught it a lesson. It should already count its blessings that it hadn't been reduced to meat jerky. Even though the other party's cultivation was currently weak, just by this identity in itself, even if the other party were to destroy the entire Master-Teacher Academy, there wasn't anyone who would dare punish him for that. Celestial Master-Teacher, an existence equivalent to Kong Shi, which Master-Teacher would dare to refute his actions? Seeing that he had managed to instill fear into the other party's heart, Zhang Xian swiftly pushed on with the momentum. It's due to your disrespect toward me that I imprisoned you and taught you a lesson. Do you harbor any grudges against me due to that? The Byzantium Helios beast swiftly shook its head in denial. I dare not. A celestial master teacher was the hope to furthering mankind's rise. Even if the old principal were in its place, he would not dare harbor a grudge toward the other party. This was the special privilege that a celestial master teacher possessed. Good. Since the misunderstanding between us is dispelled, I shall give you two options. 1. Acknowledge me as your master and I will treat your wounds and help you achieve a breakthrough in your cultivation. 2. Since you found out about my identity, in order to prevent the news from leaking, I can only silence you for good. Zhang Xian said impassively with his authoritative gaze pressurizing the other party. His identity as a celestial master teacher could not be made known to others easily. It was one thing if his fellow master teachers were to learn of it, but if the otherworldly demonic tribe were to catch hold of that news somehow, he would become a target for them to hunt down. Due to that fear, Zhang Xian refused to reveal his identity to anyone, not even to his fellow master teachers. Those who knew about it had sworn to maintaining secrecy about it. The Byzantium Helios beast was conflicted. After a moment of hesitation, it gritted its teeth and replied, I will acknowledge Zhang Shi as my master. It was not out of fear for its life that it chose this decision, but, since the person before him was a celestial master teacher, the heights that he would surely reach were unthinkable. Perhaps, he might be able to exact vengeance for his master. Since you have decided to acknowledge me as your master, I will give you my word too then. As soon as I possess sufficient strength, I will investigate the true reason behind the old principal's death and avenge him. Zhang Xian also noticed the Byzantium Helios beast's intentions, and he gave his word. Thank you, master. Seeing the other party promising it of the matter even before it could speak, the Byzantium Helios beast's eyes reddened in agitation. It immediately kneeled to the floor, and a droplet of crimson blood seeped out of its glabella and into Zhang Xian's glabella. The formation of the contract. Rise. Having averted one possible calamity, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Stepping forward, he placed his palm on the Byzantium Helios beast's body and infused the pure heaven's path Shinqi into it. Within just a few moments, the latter's heavy wounds had vanished without a trace. This. The Byzantium Helios beast widened its eyes in shock. As a Saint Realm expert, it could clearly sense the unique nature of Zhang Xian's Shinqi. Not only was it unbelievably pure, it also carried a grand and majestic aura reminiscent of a deity overlooking the world. So, this is a celestial master teacher. The Byzantium Helios beast couldn't help but feel deference to Zhang Xian. You must be curious why these puppets and the will that subdued you are otherworldly demons. Oblivious to the other party's thoughts, Zhang Xian swiftly told him about the matter regarding the otherworldly demon puppets and vicious. Considering the undying loyalty that the Byzantium Helios beast held to mankind, there was no need for Zhang Xian to hide it from him. I see. After hearing the details, the Byzantium Helios beast couldn't help but feel deeper respect for Zhang Xian. Were it not for the young man before it, had the heart been given time to recover and make a comeback, mankind would have been in deep trouble. By subduing the other party, that was equivalent to averting a disastrous catastrophe for mankind, and that was a huge merit. If he were to report this contribution to the Master Teacher Pavilion, he would be rewarded with the top-tier saint weapons. Since you have submitted to me, I will treat you as one of my own. Here is an inner core of an ancient ape. As long as you assimilate it, you should be able to overcome your current bottleneck and reach higher realms. Flicking his wrist, Zhang Xian threw the inner core he had procured from the ancient ape on the cloud mist ridge over. Just like the ancient ape, the Byzantium Helios beast was also an ape-type saint beast as well. Due to the similarities in their constitution, it shouldn't be too difficult for the Byzantium Helios beast to assimilate the inner core to raise its cultivation. Thank you, Master. Holding the inner core in hand and feeling the pulsating energy within it, the Byzantium Helios beast's eyes reddened in agitation. Just as Zhang Xian had deduced, the inner core was indeed extremely useful to him. If he were to utilize it well, he could easily reach Saint Realm 2 Dan. There's no one around here, so you can cultivate here without worries. Seeing the excited gleam in the other party's eyes, Zhang Xian left the Byzantium Helios to be and walked out of the formation. The matter with the Byzantium Helios beast was finally resolved. With the backing of the old principal's tamed beast, it was unlikely that there would be anyone who would dare to challenge him in the Master Teacher Academy in the future. Just as Zhang Xian was stretching his back lazily, Sun Chang walked up to him and reported, "Young Master, Lady Luo is here. She is waiting in the main hall." "She's here." Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he rushed to the main hall. Even though he had only met Luo Ruoxin thrice, he couldn't help but feel something special for her. It was an inexplicable sensation, but it was one he had never found in any other lady before. In terms of beauty, he had met plenty of beautiful lady before. Zhao Ye, Wang Ying, Shen Bairu, Zhao Feiwu, Luo Qiqi, Yu Fei'er, Hu Yaoyao. They were also ravishing beauties with their own unique disposition and charm. But toward them, he only harbored ordinary feelings between one of a teacher and student or friends, nothing more than that. He had no idea why this was the case. But with Luo Ruoxin, just the thought of spending some time with the other party left his heart hastening slightly in anticipation. Stepping into the main hall, he saw the back of a ravishing white-robed figure standing at the center of the room. The figure was relatively small in contrast to the vast room, but her beautiful silhouette seemed to capture one's attention entirely, rendering it impossible to tear one's eyes away from her. Luo Shi. With a smile, Zhang Xian stepped forward and greeted her. Zhang Shi. Luo Shi turned around and smiled. In an instant, it was as if a field of flowers had bloomed in the room. After settling down in the seats in the main hall and exchanging some pleasantries, Luo Ruoxin said, "I came to look for you because I have something I require your help on. Feel free to request anything from me. As long as it's within my means, I will definitely accomplish it." Zhang Xian said. Zhang Shi is truly too polite. However, the matter I am going to request of you is indeed something only you can do because you possess the eye of insight. On top of that, if I am not mistaken, you are a celestial master teacher too, right? Luo Ruoxin said calmly. You. Taken aback, Zhang Xian widened his eyes in astonishment. He had been doing his best to conceal his identity as a celestial master teacher all along, and not even a 7-star master teacher like Mu Shi had been able to see through it. But Luo Ruoxin actually saw through it with a single glance. Was this for real? So far, the only one who had managed to do so was Vicious. But Vicious was a figure who had fought with Kong Shi on equal grounds in his time. It should come as no surprise that his eyes would be keener than many others. However, Luo Shi should only be a 6-star master teacher. How could she see through it as well? Noticing Zhang Xian's shock, Luo Ruoxin smiled. I noticed it back when we first met in the Verdant Mountain. However, as we weren't really acquainted with one another then, I chose not to point it out. As she spoke, she couldn't help but recall the other party's silly actions back in the Verdant Mountain, and an urge to chuckle welled up in her. In the time that she had lived, she had encountered countless geniuses of all sort. However, this was the first time she had encountered one as silly as him. I see. Zhang Xian scratched his head, not knowing how he should respond. It wasn't like he had to hide his identity as a celestial master teacher at all cost. All he feared was the news reaching the ears of the otherworldly demonic tribe. But since the other party had been aware of it but kept silent all along, she should be a trustworthy person. May I know what the matter you require my help on is? Zhang Xian asked. Considering the fact that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation and that the other party was able to tell that he was a celestial master teacher easily, there was no doubt that Luo Ruoxin wasn't an ordinary 6-star master teacher. At the very least, it was highly likely that she possessed strength on par with Mu Shi. For such an expert to require his help, what could the matter be? I want you to follow me to the Saint Ascension platform. Luo Ruoxin said. Saint Ascension platform? Zhang Xian frowned. He had never heard of such a place before. It is said to be the place where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood back then. I wish to visit there to take a look and verify some deductions of mine, Luo Ruoxin said with a slight frown. The place where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood? Zhang Xian was astonished. Indeed. Legend has it that Kong Shi was no ordinary saint but one recognized by the heavens, thus the usage of the word ascension. The Saint Ascension platform isn't an ancient ruin but a popular tourist location. Each year, countless master teachers would make a pilgrimage there to pay their respects to Kong Shi, said Luo Ruoxin. It's a tourist location. If that's the case, what am I to do there? Zhang Xian asked in astonishment. Since the Saint Ascension platform was a tourist location, every nook and cranny of it must have been examined innumerable times by the master teachers visiting it. Even if he were to head there, it was unlikely that he would be able to contribute anything. You are a celestial master teacher just like Kong Shi. On top of that, you have also comprehended the Eye of Insight. Perhaps, you might be able to see something others can't, Luo Ruoxin replied. Besides, Kong Shi's handwritten words are inscribed there. It will be beneficial for you to take a look too. This. Zhang Xian hesitated. How far is the Saint Ascension platform from here? Not too far. If you ride on the Great Violet Wing Beast, the journey should take about 6 to 7 days. Luo Ruoxin said with a chuckle. Chapter 831, Zhang Xian, I shall crush you utterly. 6 to 7 days. That's not too far. Zhang Xian nodded. Despite being a transcendent mortal 9-dan spirit beast, the Great Violet Wing Beast wouldn't even be able to reach the borders of Hongyuan Empire in 6 to 7 days. Judging from that, it didn't seem like the Saint Ascension platform was too far away. With a faint smile, Luo Ruoxin asked, how about it? Are you interested in going with me? Of course. Zhang Xian nodded excitedly. Putting aside that Luo Ruoxin was going as well, it was a good opportunity in itself for any master teacher to visit the grounds where Kong Shi had ascended to sainthood. On top of that, there was a chance he might learn something about the innate fetal poison there as well. Having made up his mind, Zhang Xian asked, when do we set off? If it is convenient for you, we can set forth this instant. Luo Ruoxin replied. All right. Zhang Xian nodded. Since the Grand Intermittence grass hadn't arrived yet, Zhang Xian couldn't forge the Grand Intermittence pill. At the current moment, Wei Ruyan's soul and body were being nourished by the 10-leafed flower and earth vein spirit essence respectively, so there shouldn't be any problems in the short run. A 6 to 7 days journey shouldn't be an issue. After instructing Sun Chang to take care of the others, he and Luo Ruoxin leaped onto the back of the Great Violet Wing Beast and set forth for the Saint Ascension platform. Shortly after Zhang Xian left Hongyuan City, Dong Xian arrived at the office of the head of the Formation Master School, Qin Qingshuan. Noticing the anxiety on the usually composed face of his most prided student, Qin Qingshuan asked apprehensively, what's wrong? Dong Xian clenched her teeth and said, I have something extremely important to report. I hope that teacher can take me to meet school head Lu Feng. You want to meet school head Lu Feng? Whatever for? Qin Qingshuan frowned. A matter brought up with the stand-in principal would elevate the issue to the academy-wide level. Just what kind of matter would require such attention? This matter concerns the safety of the Master Teacher Academy, as well as Senior Byzantium Helios and the otherworldly demonic tribe. Dong Xian said grimly. Senior Byzantium Helios. Qin Qingshuan immediately stood up in agitation. You have news on him? Yes. Dong Xian nodded. That's good news. Follow me, I'll take you to school head Lu. Not daring to make light of the matter, Qin Qingshuan swiftly took his direct disciple to the apothecary school. Before long, they arrived at Lu Feng's residence. After sealing the surroundings to ward off any eavesdroppers, the two school heads took their seats and gazed at the young lady before them. So, what's the matter? Lu Feng asked with a tinge of agitation in his voice. Mu Shi had once said that whoever who found the Byzantium Helios beast would be the next principal of the academy. If Lu Feng were to obtain the authority of principal, he would be able to deal with Zhang Xian as he pleased. Be it Mo Zhu or Zhao Bingxiu, they would only be able to accept the verdict quietly. It's like this. Earlier today, I saw Senior Byzantium Helios. Dong Xian said. Lu Feng and Qin Qingshuan's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing those words. You saw him. Where is he? Is he safe? Lu Feng asked anxiously. Since Dong Xian had seen the Byzantium Helios beast that day, it meant that the latter was still in Hongyuan City. If so, they could still make it in time to save him if they were to rush over immediately. He is currently in Zhang Xian's manor, Dong Xian said. Zhang Xian's manor? Why would Senior Byzantium Helios be there? Lu Feng asked in astonishment. It's like this. By some coincidence. I happened to pass by the manor and saw Senior Byzantium Helios being trapped within a formation in the manor. He tried to escape, but he couldn't break out of the formation. Without hiding anything, Dong Xian revealed everything she had seen in Zhang Xian's manor. As she had been hidden quite a distance away, she couldn't get a clear glimpse of the puppets, so she thought that they were real otherworldly demons. You are saying that? Zhang Xian ordered 20 otherworldly demons to assault Senior Byzantium Helios, and from the looks of the situation then, he seems to be their leader. Overwhelmed by the news before him, Lu Feng abruptly stood up. This was really beyond his imagination. Even for someone who had lived for several centuries, he could hardly believe what he had just heard. Is what you said true? Chen Qingxuan asked Dong Xian anxiously. This was truly a huge matter. To order 20 otherworldly demons to attack the Byzantium Helios beast, and to emanate a powerful killing intent himself. All of this was clearly screaming that Zhang Xian was a spy in the Master Teacher Academy, and it was highly likely that he was an otherworldly demon himself. I am willing to use my identity as a Master Teacher to vow that every word that I have said is true. If there is the slightest falsehood in my words, I am willing to have my Master Teacher license revoked. Dong Xian raised her right hand and swore earnestly. To swear in one's name as a master teacher was one of the heaviest vows one could make. If something were to go wrong, even if the master teacher pavilion chose not to pursue the matter, it would still lead to a collapse in faith, making it difficult for one to make any progress in their soul depth. Seeing Dong Xian make such a vow, Lu Feng and Chen Qingxuan exchanged glances, and their expression grew even graver. A moment later, a thought suddenly struck Lu Feng, and he exclaimed in realization, that explains why that fellow is skilled in so many supporting occupations despite being only 20 this year, surpassing even school heads like us. So that's the reason. Noticing the confusion of the other two beside him, Lu Feng explained, the otherworldly demons possess a far longer lifespan than us humans. Even though that fellow seems to be in his early 20s, the chances are that he is an old monster who has lived through many eras. Otherwise, how could he possibly achieve such expertise in his smithing, pill forging, medicine, and terpsichorean arts? Chen Qingxuan pondered for a brief moment before nodding in agreement. What you've said makes sense. He has been causing great chaos in the academy ever since his enrollment, rallying the students to join his Xianxian faction and support him. I have been thinking that there is something abnormal about this situation, but if he truly is an otherworldly demon, everything makes perfect sense. That Zhang Xian simply had far too many mysteries surrounding him. Even his comprehension of the Eye of Insight seemed insufficient to justify the unbelievable accomplishments he had achieved thus far. However, if he was indeed an otherworldly demon, everything came together like pieces in a puzzle. Otherworldly demons are the bane of humanity. As master teachers, we have to kill every single one of them. A sharp glint flashed across Lu Feng's eyes, and he gritted his teeth furiously. The enmity between otherworldly demons and humanity was already etched deep into their bones, irreconcilable at this point. Since Zhang Xian was an otherworldly demon, there was only one thing to do, he had to die. That's right. It's our responsibility as master teachers to eliminate all those who intend humanity harm. Chen Qingxuan spoke in agreement. However, the next moment, a frown appeared on his forehead. But Zhang Xian has already won the trust of School Head Mo, School Head Zhao, and the others. If we can't find any concrete evidence against him, we might only end up creating a rift among ourselves. Those fools. Lu Feng harumphed coldly. With an air of superiority, he declared confidently, from the first time I saw him, I could tell that fellow wasn't a good person, but they just simply wouldn't believe it. Now, look at what their obstinacy has led us to. Alright, let's look for Mu Shi and explain this matter to him. Afterward, we shall assemble the 10 great master teachers, bring Zhang Xian over, and expose him before them. Indeed. With Mu Shi around, the others won't be able to oppose the matter. Chen Qingxuan nodded in agreement. Lu Feng nodded in satisfaction. After which, he turned to the young lady in the room and said, "You are Dong Xian, right? You have done well. Later, when we meet Mu Shi, recount what you have seen to him. I know that apothecary is one of your supporting occupations as well. As long as you settle this matter well, I will take you in as my direct disciple and impart pill forging to you personally." Hearing those words, Dong Xian immediately kneeled down and greeted agitatedly, "Dong Xian pays respect to Lu Laoshi. If Lu Feng were to become the principal of the academy, she would be the direct disciple of the principal. With her standing as the direct disciples of two school heads, it would only be a matter of time before her Dong Xian faction became the #1 faction in the academy. Ha 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 ha. Hu Yao Yao, Long Sangyue, and Shui Zhenyang, let's see how you compare to me then. As for Zhang Xian, with his identity as an otherworldly demon revealed, his life was over. His name was no longer worth even a mention. Alright, let's look for Mu Shi now. With a nod, Lu Feng was just about to head out when he abruptly stopped. Wait a moment. If I recall correctly, Zhang Xian has a close relationship with Luo Shi as well. If we meet Mu Shi now, I fear that the news might reach Zhang Xian somehow, giving him time to make preparations in advance. It will be difficult for us to capture him if he flees. Concealing his aura and disguising as a master teacher, it would mean that the other party was likely royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe. If an expert of that caliber were to flee in advance, not even a conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion would necessarily be able to track him down and capture him, let alone the Master Teacher Academy. This matter would have to be planned carefully. Indeed. Chen Qingshuan also nodded in agreement. No matter how slim the chances were, it was never wrong to be prepared. After a moment of contemplation, Lu Feng instructed, "School head Chen, help me look into where that Zhang Xian is at the moment. Dispatch a few men to observe him all day long, don't give him any chance to escape. Once our preparations are ready, we shall inform Mu Shi and have him judge the matter." As much as he would have loved to rush straight up to Zhang Xian and have him executed immediately, he knew that this wasn't the time to be reckless. As a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, he was still able to keep his composure in crucial moments like this. "I will have it done," School head Chen replied before leaving the room. A moment later, he returned after dispatching 2 elders to Zhang Xian's manor. An hour later, one of the 2 elders walked into the room and reported, "School head Lu, School head Chen, we went to Zhang Xian's manor, and he isn't there. Thus, we asked around, and it seems like he left on an aerial spirit beast with Luo Shi earlier this afternoon." He left? The trio was stunned. That's right. He left 2 hours ago. As for where he went, he didn't inform anyone before departing, so we weren't able to uncover his trail, the elder replied. With their cultivation as Saint Realm experts, it wasn't too difficult for them to check the entire manor discreetly to confirm Zhang Xian's absence. After which, they questioned those living in the vicinity about Zhang Xian's whereabouts, which was where they learned that Zhang Xian had left with Luo Shi on an aerial spirit beast. However, considering that not even Sun Cheng knew where he was heading, there was no way the others could possibly know. He left 2 hours ago. Lu Feng's complexion was extremely awful. A spirit beast could cover several thousand kilometers in 2 hours. Even if he were to dispatch the full force of the Master Teacher Academy, there was no way he could locate an aerial spirit beast who could be anywhere within a several thousand kilometer radius in a short period of time, and by the time they managed to find any trail, the other party would have been long gone. Lu Feng turned around and asked, "Are his students still around?" "They are," the elder replied. "Also, based on our sources, it seems Luo Shi was the one who extended the invitation to him to head out." "That's good. From the looks of it, it seems he has only headed out to settle some matters. The fact that his students are still around likely means that the news hasn't reached him yet. Keep a close eye on this matter. As soon as he returns, make sure to report to me as soon as possible." Flinging his sleeves, Lu Feng instructed them with a majestic disposition fitting that of a principal of the Master-Teacher Academy. Yes. The elder nodded before leaving the room. Now that he's not around, what do we do? Chen Qingshuan asked. What do we do? We wait. As soon as he returns, we shall conduct an elder conference and unmask his true identity before Mu Shi and the others. With killing intent raging in his eyes, Lu Feng sneered coldly. Arrogant, aren't you? Challenging my authority and destroying my apothecary school. Zhang Xian, let me tell you. Your good days have come to an end. Just wait and see. I, Lu Feng, shall crush you utterly. Chapter 832, Saint Ascension Platform. While Lu Feng and the others were organizing their ploy to expose Zhang Xian's true identity, Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin were seated by the window in the room on the back of the great violet-winged beast, watching as the clouds flew by them. The Saint Ascension Platform is the place where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood. Upon his ascension, he inscribed his insights personally on a cliff face at the peak of the mountain. On top of that, it said that he also left a sliver of his will there to gift to a fated man. Since you are a celestial master teacher as well, you might just be able to obtain it. Luo Ruoxin said with a smile. A sliver of Kong Shi's will. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. As the founder of the Master Teacher Pavilion, even a sliver of Kong Shi's will could send countless master teachers fighting frenziedly over it. That's right. The will isn't too strong as it was left right after Kong Shi reached Saint Realm, but nevertheless, considering that it belonged to Kong Shi, it is not something to be underestimated. If you were to obtain and assimilate it, it won't be long before you reach Saint Realm too. Luo Ruoxin replied with a nod. Saint Realm? A bitter smile emerged on Zhang Xian's face. I am only at perfect harmonization realm at the moment, still a long distance away from reaching Saint Realm. Beyond perfect harmonization realm was ethereal treading realm, chrysalis realm, half-saint, and finally, nascent saint. There were 4 realms standing between him and Saint Realm. Even if he were to gather sufficient cultivation technique manuals to compile the respective Heaven's Path divine arts for those realms, the Earth Vein spirit essence was still unlikely to be sufficient for him to cultivate that far. The Heaven's Path divine arts demand for spiritual energy increased at an exponential rate. Perhaps, Zhang Xian might have to expend up to 1,000 times more spirit stones or spirit essence just to reach Saint Realm. Furthermore, the thresholds between chrysalis realm to half-saint and half-saint to nascent saint were known to be extremely difficult to overcome. Many preceding cultivators had their journeys terminated prematurely at those 2 bottlenecks. Even if Zhang Xian cultivated the Heaven's Path divine art, he wasn't certain that he could overcome them for sure. When I first met you at the Verdant Mountain, you were only at Clarifying Turbidity Realm Pinnacle. However, in less than 2 months, you have already reached Perfect Harmonization Realm Pinnacle. That's a growth of 3 realms in less than 2 months. Even I hardly see such swift growth around. Saint Realm might still be a distance away, but it shouldn't be a problem for you. Luo Ruoxin consoled. When she had first met Zhang Xian, he had only been at Clarifying Turbidity Realm Pinnacle. In their second meeting, he had already reached Cosmos Bridge Realm Pinnacle. She had thought that his current rate of growth was already incredible, but when she met him once more the day before, he was already a perfect harmonization realm expert. Such a rate of growth was truly astounding. I was just lucky. Zhang Xian smiled awkwardly. Not wanting to dwell further on this topic, Zhang Xian suddenly thought of something and asked, Right, do you have any ethereal treading realm cultivation technique manuals with you? The quality doesn't matter, I just need as many of them as possible. The Master Teacher Academy did have a cultivation depository to store cultivation technique manuals, but its security was far tighter than the other libraries in the Academy. Putting aside the fact that the advanced formation made it hard for even a soul to slip in, the ones guarding the premises were mainly the Saint Realm teachers as well. After the prior experience in the Terpsichorean Compendium Pavilion, he dared not enter it recklessly. One way Ranchua had already nearly him killed. If he were to encounter multiple Saint Realm experts specializing in soul attacks, he might just very well lose his life. As a result, despite visiting the libraries of the various schools, he hadn't paid the cultivation depository a visit yet. It was not that he couldn't find it, but he dared not enter it. Since it happened that there was nothing to do at the moment, if he could obtain some ethereal treading realm cultivation technique manuals from the other party, he could study them and raise his cultivation. Ethereal treading realm cultivation technique manuals. I only have one of those, and it's a cultivation technique passed down within my clan, so I am unable to share it with you. Luo Ruoxin shook her head. Pardon me, I was being impetuous. Zhang Xian apologized. Based on what he knew, the young lady before him was likely from a sage clan, the Luo clan. Clans like that guarded their heritage tightly, and asking for the other party's cultivation technique abruptly could be considered a disrespectful action. Take Mu Shi for example, he was expelled from his clan due to revealing the secrets of his clan's cultivation technique to an outsider. Don't worry about it. However, if you wish to make a breakthrough to the ethereal treading realm, I can offer you some pointers instead. Luo Ruoxin smiled. Ethereal treading, the eighth dan of transcendent mortal. By aligning one's body with nature, one can achieve the feat of stepping upon thin air. Listening carefully to Luo Ruoxin's words, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. As expected of an expert from a sage clan, her understanding of ethereal treading realm was extremely detailed, and there were nearly no mistakes to be found. If Zhang Xian were to cultivate by the method she had imparted, even without a compiled Heaven's Path divine art, he would still be able to achieve a breakthrough. However, he decided not to rush into it. Even for a cultivator of the Heaven's Path divine art, it was still essential for him to build a strong foundation for his cultivation. Otherwise, even if he could advance his cultivation swiftly, it would be like the moon in the water, dissipating with a light touch. It had only been 2 days since he had reached perfect harmonization realm, so it was imperative for him to allow his cultivation to settle down first before making another advancement. Nevertheless, the conversation with Luo Ruoxin benefited him greatly, giving him a deeper insight into the intricacies of cultivation. It was a 3-day journey to the Saint Ascension platform. Zhang Xian had been too busy with various miscellaneous matters previously to cultivate, so this was a good opportunity for him to reinforce his cultivation. Absorbing the earth vein spirit essence, Zhang Xian further tempered his Heaven's Path Shinqi, making it even purer and more condensed. Time passed in a flash. The 3 days of hard work had allowed Zhang Xian to fully reinforce his perfect harmonization realm pinnacle cultivation, resulting in his aura becoming sharper than before. Even though his strength was still capped at 14 million ding, he had become able to utilize his Shinqi more nimbly, thus furthering his battle prowess. However, the most conspicuous change was with the spiritual sea in his dantian, having expanded by more than 2-fold. Pure Shinqi filled the area to the brim, and as if a full dam, one could draw immense power from it in an instant. At the same time, his understanding of the perfect harmonization realm had also deepened. If he wished to, he could achieve a breakthrough to the ethereal treading realm whenever he wanted to. I should take a look at the Golden Book first. Zhang Xian thought. After accepting school head Jiang as his student, a Golden Book had appeared in his library of Heaven's Path. Due to the various matters he had needed to address back then, he hadn't had chance to take a good look at it. Since they were still a distance away from the Saint Ascension platform, this was a good opportunity to examine it. This book resembled the Golden Book of Heaven's Path before the Library of Heaven's Path's upgrade, but its cover was replaced with a deeper tone instead. However, that only seemed to grant it a profound and grand aura. It seems like with the upgrade of the Library of Heaven's Path, even the Book of Heaven's Path has upgraded too. Zhang Xian noted. So far, the golden pages in the Book of Heaven's Path had 4 main known uses, assimilating the knowledge of the books contained in the Library of Heaven's Path into his mind, serving as a brick to crush one to death, this was effective on even experts of vicious caliber as well, raising one's soul depth, and sealing an entity within the page. After the upgrade, would the pages formed within the slightly darker Book of Heaven's Path possess some different abilities? Just as Zhang Xian was about to delve deeper into the matter, a gentle voice suddenly interrupted him. We have arrived at the Saint Ascension platform. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian immediately withdrew his consciousness from the Library of Heaven's Path, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Luo Ruoxin standing by the window. Her eyes were gazing at the sight outside, forming a peaceful and picturesque scene. Zhang Xian walked up to her, and beyond the window, he saw a tall mountain towering in the midst of an empty plain, resembling a majestic dragon rising to the clouds. However, what was particularly striking was that the mountain had a flat peak, and from afar, it resembled a massive altar. There was a mountainous path coiling around the mountain that led straight to the top. So, this is the Saint Ascension platform? Zhang Xian widened his eyes in astonishment. By the bizarre work of nature, the mountain seemed to resemble an altar connecting the heaven and the earth together. It would be hard to imagine that there could be such a unique naturally occurring landscape had Zhang Xian not seen it with his own eyes. It's said that Kong Shi sat at the top of the mountain for 3 days, and at the moment of his breakthrough, the voices of the angels descended from the heavens, and myriad gongs chimed simultaneously in celebration of his accomplishment. Seemingly knowing quite a bit regarding the details of Kong Shi's ascension to sainthood, Luo Ruoxin explained with a smile, no one knew what the mountain was like before, but it assumed its current form after Kong Shi ascended to sainthood. It resembles an altar allowing those born on earth to come in touch with the heavens, doesn't it? Cultivating at the peak of the mountain helps to open up one's mind, which may aid one in achieving a breakthrough. This is also the reason many cultivators choose to make a pilgrimage here in seek of overcoming their bottleneck. Zhang Xian nodded. Through his eye of insight, he could see many silhouettes walking along the coiling mountainous path in the distance. Just as Luo Ruoxin had said, there were many who visited these grounds in hope of seeking enlightenment. However, whether one succeeded or not would be dependent on their luck. As this is the place where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood, the Master Teacher Pavilion has deemed this area as one of its sacred grounds. If one wishes to visit the top, one will have to walk up the mountain a step at a time. All forms of flight are banned, and not even Saint Realm experts are excluded from the rule. Let's land at the foot of the mountain, Luo Ruoxin said. Out of respect to Kong Shi, pilgrims were disallowed from flying straight to the peak. If one wanted to reach the top, there was only one way, and that was to scale the mountain via the coiling mountainous path. Thus, Zhang Xian had the great violet-winged beast land at the foot of the mountain. However, before they could even reach the ground, they could already see countless people donned in master-teacher robes slowly walking up the mountainous path. Most of them were Chrysalis Realm experts, but there were also a handful of half-saints and nascent saints too. Some of them were master teachers, but there were also ordinary cultivators amid the crowd as well. It seemed like they had come here in seek of a miracle too. Are these experts all from Hongyuan Empire? Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. With just a sweeping gaze, he could easily spot over 10,000 cultivators on the mountainous path, and they were all Chrysalis Realm, half-saint, and nascent saint experts. But when had there been so many experts in Hongyuan Empire? Of course not. The Ascension Saint platform is located near the borders of Hongyuan Empire, at the intersection of over a dozen Tier 1 empires. Sometimes, even cultivators from the conferred empires pay a visit here too. Most likely, of the crowd you see ahead of you, less than 1% is from Hongyuan Empire, Luo Ruoxin replied. Zhang Xian nodded. I see. After all the reading he had done over the past few days, he had obtained a rough overview of the distribution of power in the region. Hongyuan Empire was a Tier 1 empire beneath Qingyuan conferred empire. In total, there were several dozen Tier 1 empires like Hongyuan under Qingyuan conferred empire. All in all, Qingyuan extended over several 10 million kilometers, and its population exceeded 1 trillion. Even though Hongyuan Empire was well reputed in Qingyuan conferred empire due to the existence of the Master Teacher Academy, it was still far from being the largest and strongest among the Tier 1 empires. At most, it could only be considered as slightly above average. This was also precisely the reason there weren't many experts in Hongyuan Empire. The strongest expert in Hongyuan City was only at Saint Realm 1 Dan Pinnacle, but in some of the more powerful Tier 1 empires, there might be Saint 2 Dan or even Saint 3 Dan experts. Even among Tier 1 empires, there could be a significant difference in the fighting prowess of each empire. Are there Master Teacher Academies in the other Tier 1 empire too, or is it only found in Hongyuan Empire? Zhang Xian asked. Establishing a Master Teacher Academy is an extremely expensive project requiring huge amount of resources. As such, even though Hongyuan Master Teacher isn't the only place with a Master Teacher Academy, there are very few Tier 1 empires that have them. Of the dozens of Tier 1 empire under Qingyuan conferred empire, there are only 4 Master Teacher Academies in total, said Luo Ruoxin. However, these 4 academies are located rather far from one another, so not a lot of people are aware of their existence. There are 4 academies? Zhang Xian was astonished. All along, he had thought that Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy was the only one among the Tier 1 empires. Who would have thought that there were 3 others as well? Considering that Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy had 100,000 master teachers, it should be around the same for the other academies as well. It seemed the Master Teacher continent was truly huge, at least several dozen thousand times larger than the planet he had lived on previously. Scary. Chapter 833, Ancient Secret. Amid chatter, the great violet-winged beast eventually arrived at the foot of a mountain and landed. Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin stepped off its back and watched it leave into the distance before following the crowd on the path up the mountain. With the Master Teacher emblem pinned on their chests, there wasn't anyone who hindered their path. After taking a few steps, Luo Ruoxin gestured to her surroundings. Recorded along this path are the insights and comprehension of cultivation that countless predecessors have left behind after paying the Saint Ascension platform a visit. Taking a closer look at the cliff face by the side, there were indeed all kinds of inscriptions on it. There were 2 main reasons master teachers would make a pilgrimage there. One was to pay respects to the Honorable Kong Shi, and the second was to utilize the lingering aura around the Saint Ascension platform to achieve a breakthrough to sainthood. Just as there were those who failed, there were also those who succeeded. Out of sheer delight, those who had succeeded would usually record the insights they had upon breaking through so that future generations could refer to them, and perhaps, take the final step across the threshold as well. Of course, each insight was only based on the individual's comprehension, so they might not be applicable to everyone. Nevertheless, over the course of many years, countless insights had accumulated on the cliff faces, making them a valuable source of inspiration. Most of these detailed the methods and the sensations experienced upon achieving breakthroughs to half-saint, nascent saint, and even saint realm. Quite a few pilgrims had stopped in their footsteps to study them carefully, mesmerized by the content. There are too many insights here. It will take me at least a month to finish all of them. In the several dozen millennia since Kong Shi's ascension to sainthood, countless experts had visited the Saint Ascension platform, and the writing extended all the way to the various mountains in the vicinity. Even with Zhang Xian's photographic memory, it would still take at least a month for him to see all of the insights. Glancing at the cultivators who were studying the writing intently, Luo Ruoxin shook her head. Each cultivator has their own unique constitution, cultivation technique, and personality. Due to these differences, what they require to achieve a breakthrough also differed from one another. These insights may seem like a valuable source of inspiration, but if one were to read too many of them, one might lose sight of what is important and descend into confusion instead. As useful as the writing might be, it had its flaws as well. Most of the insights contained the crystallization of the wisdom of the writer, making them a valuable source of knowledge. However, what worked for one might not necessarily work for another. The more knowledge one accumulated, the more paths would be opened up before one. But at the same time, it also made it more difficult to sieve out the feasible path from all of the options. Besides, even though there were countless roads a cultivator could take, all of these roads eventually converged into the same peak. The Master-Teacher Pavilion encouraged cultivators to be innovative and take risks. It was through such a culture that innumerable cultivation techniques, battle techniques, and secret arts had been created over the years. There were even more formidable cultivators who had successfully forged their own unique paths based on their own interpretation of the world, some conflicting with the accepted conventions of cultivation even, but they still managed to create their own feasible system. Given the astounding complexity and vast number of possibilities within cultivation, there was no cultivator who could possibly make sense of everything. As such, there were many cultivators whose cultivation had gone berserk due to taking in too much miscellaneous information and losing their way. This was also the reason the Master-Teacher Pavilion maintained a tight control over the impartation of cultivation techniques. Only with the permission of a master teacher would a cultivator be allowed to copy the content of a cultivation technique manual. Otherwise, if one were to study indiscriminately, they could very well end up dulling their judgment instead, resulting in confusion. It was also for the same reason most master teachers were encouraged not to study the writings unless they had been stuck in a bottleneck for too long and couldn't find the impetus to make a breakthrough. While others might not be able to fully make sense of the writings inscribed into the cliff face, I am different. Zhang Xian thought. There were insights from at least several million cultivators inscribed in the area, and perhaps even Kong Shi might have fallen into a state of confusion from this bombardment of information. However, Zhang Xian was different. With the Library of Heaven's Path, he could easily discern truth from falsehood and rationalize everything easily. Such a problem wouldn't affect him. But, these writings aren't in the form of books but engravings on the wall. I wonder if I can take them in. So far, the Library of Heaven's Path had only taken in written information in the form of books. Considering that the writings were inscribed on the cliff instead, it was hard to tell whether the Library of Heaven's Path could copy them in or not. I should give it a try. Flaws. Zhang Xian muttered softly with his eyes fixated on the wall. Walalala. The next moment, the Library of Heaven's Path jolted intensely, and countless books fell from the heavens and onto the shelves. Zhang Xian took one of the books out and flipped it open. It contained the words which his gaze had been fixated on previously. It works. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. It seemed that, with the upgrade of the Library of Heaven's Path, his ability to store information in the Library of Heaven's Path by his gaze wasn't limited to only books but possibly written information of any sort too. I don't have any use for these at the moment, but once my cultivation reaches the required level, I won't have to go through the trouble of searching for cultivation technique manuals anymore. Zhang Xian thought in delight as he followed Luo Ruoxin up the mountain. Along the way, his gaze would sweep across the cliff face to take in the insights on it. If he had read them normally, it would have taken him a month's time at the very least. However, being able to take in the writings with his gaze, his speed was only limited by how fast he could walk. On top of that, the content would be filtered through the Library of Heaven's Path too, so he need not worry about falling into confusion either. As the duo advanced, the number of cultivators who lingered by the cliff faces to study the writings reduced, and the number of experts increased. The bottom of the mountain was mainly filled with Chrysalis Realm cultivators, but at their current location, the crowd was predominantly nascent Saint experts. Because of that, he became the odd one out instead, being the only perfect harmonization realm cultivator there. As the Saint Ascension platform was considered a sacred ground for master teachers, there were none who dared cause trouble here. Advancing ahead, it took Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin an entire night before they arrived at the peak. There, they saw something resembling an altar. On the flat peak towered a massive cliff face, and there were countless cultivators densely packed before it. Some were master teachers, and some were ordinary cultivators, but one thing common among them was that they were gazing deeply into the words on the cliff face, some pondering, some analyzing, some experimenting, and some cultivating. The surroundings were extremely quiet, as if no one was willing to disturb the tranquility that lingered in these sacred grounds. These are the insights that Kang Shi had when he ascended to sainthood, Luo Ruoxin informed Zhang Xian telepathically. This was left behind by Kang Shi. Zhang Xian turned his gaze to the cliff face. Majestic words describing a person's insight in his breakthrough from nascent saint to saint realm were inscribed on the cliff face. With Zhang Xian's deep comprehension of painting, he could tell that the words had achieved a profound level. If not for some kind of power suppressing them, they might have gained sentience and escaped from the cliff face, becoming a life form themselves. Upon reaching the peak of painting, one could create a palpable world with one's brush, leaving others unable to discern it from the real world. Legend had it that a 9-star painter once drew out a prison that incarcerated an army of millions to their deaths. The army had no lack of Saint Realm experts as well, but not a single person had been able to escape from the world he created. While the painting on the cliff face had yet to reach such a level, it gave the distinct feeling of a life form, as if the words would leap out from their positions and slip away any moment. After looking for a moment, Zhang Xian replied with a frown, "Wait a moment, these words don't seem like Kang Shi's." While these words carried an imposing disposition to them, they lacked the magnanimity to harness the world within them. Since it was something left behind by Kang Shi, it should carry altruism for the world in it. But the act of these words attempting to escape by themselves was conflicting with that. "You have seen Kang Shi's words before?" Luo Ruoxin asked. A student of mine has Kang Shi's personal letter which contains his handwritten words. The form might be similar, but there's something quite different about the words on this cliff face and that. Zhang Xian replied. Why would they hold such strict examinations? Luo Ruoxin said with complex emotions rippling in her eyes as she shook her head. Hongyuan Empire may seem calm, but that's far from the case. Are you saying that there are otherworldly demons in Hongyuan Empire? Zhang Xian's face warped in shock. Indeed. You must have heard of the disappearance of the Master Teacher Academy's old principal as well. If my conjecture is right, that's probably the doing of the otherworldly demonic tribe as well, Luo Ruoxin said with melancholy. The doing of the otherworldly demonic tribe? Zhang Xian's expression turned grim. If the old principal's death was truly the doing to the otherworldly demonic tribe, that would explain why the Byzantium Helios beast carried such hatred for him back then. Hu Yaoyao also said something similar to that. Zhang Xian tightened his fists. With the presence of the Master Teacher Academy in the city, he had always thought that Hongyuan City was as secure as it could get. However, it seemed like his thoughts were too naive. The otherworldly demonic tribe originated from another world. Back then, in order to invade the Master Teacher continent, they built many passageways linking their world to here, and Hongyuan City happens to be one of the places where a passageway is located. Otherwise, considering how Hongyuan Empire's national power is only average among the various Tier 1 empires, how could the Master Teacher Academy be built here? Luo Ruoxin explained. This. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He had never really thought about this matter before, but Luo Ruoxin's words were logical and persuasive. There were indeed many doubtful aspects regarding the choice of location to establish the Master Teacher Academy. However, if the true aim of the Master Teacher Academy was to maintain the seal on the passageway between the Master Teacher continent and the other world, everything would make perfect sense. The reason I brought you here is not to study the words on this cliff face. While the cliff face once contained Kang Shi's handwritten words, what remains is just an imitation. It might be possible to imitate the form, but it is impossible to imitate the intent as well. What I hope for you to do is to use your eye of insight to trace Kang Shi's aura and find the real location where Kang Shi ascended to sainthood. Luo Ruoxin said. The real location where Kang Shi ascended to sainthood? You are saying that he didn't ascend to sainthood on this peak? Since this place was known as the Saint Ascension Platform, it was naturally the place where others thought Kong Shi had ascended to sainthood. Could it be that this Saint Ascension Platform is a fake? Chapter 834, Saint Ascension Circle. Knowing what Zhang Xian was thinking about, Luo Ruoxin replied with a smile, of course not. It's true that Kong Shi ascended to sainthood here, but it's not certain exactly where in this huge area he did so. This. Zhang Xian blinked his eyes blankly. The flat peak of the mountain in itself extended for several 10,000 mu. On the other hand, Kong Shi would only take up, at most, a square meter by himself during his cultivation. To find a single square meter from an area of several 10,000 mu. That was indeed difficult. But is there a purpose to finding the exact location where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood? Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. The entire mountain was permeated with the grand aura that Kong Shi had left behind from his ascension to sainthood. Since that was the case, it shouldn't matter whether they found the precise location where Kong Shi had made his breakthrough at. Besides, even if they were to find it, considering that several dozen millennia had passed, and the otherworldly demonic tribe had wreaked havoc here multiple times, what could possibly remain there? I just wish to verify a deduction I have. Furthermore, Kong Shi's will still remains here. It will be beneficial to you too if you can find it. Luo Ruoxin said. I will give it a try then. Hearing the other party's words, Zhang Xian eventually nodded. Activating his eye of insight, he began observing the cliff face intently, analyzing every single inch of it. As expected, those words were just an imitation of Kong Shi's original words. Through the eye of insight, he could see a clear difference in the disposition of the words as compared to those written by Kong Shi. A moment later, he shook his head. None of Kong Shi's original words remain. I can't find anything at all. You can't find anything? Luo Ruoxin frowned before sighing deeply. She had already expected such an outcome. After the many assaults on the Saint Ascension platform by the otherworldly demonic tribe, all traces of Kong Shi had been pretty much wiped clean. Even the possessor of the Eye of Insight would be unable to trace Kong Shi's trail anymore. The Eye of Insight might be formidable, but tracking down the remains from several dozen millenniums ago was clearly still beyond it. What about the surroundings? It's the same too. Furthermore, there are too many people here, so I can't clearly discern anything, Zhang Xian replied. There were countless people who scaled the Saint Ascension platform each day to cultivate, and there were all kinds of formations and tools activated in the area to facilitate their cultivation. To search for Kong Shi's trail, which would be incredibly faint, if it had not completely dissipated, after such a long period of time, amid this chaos was nigh impossible. After a moment of contemplation, Luo Ruoxin said, I see. Since that's the case, try looking at the content of the words inscribed on the cliff face. Perhaps, you might be able to find a clue in it. Since it was impossible to find Kong Shi's trail, they could only work from the inscribed words then. Even though the current words inscribed on the cliff face had not been inscribed by Kong Shi personally, the words did come from Kong Shi. Perhaps, there might be some clue contained within them. All right. Zhang Xian nodded before turning his gaze over to the cliff face. Flaws. Zhang Xian willed, and in the next instant, a book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. He picked up the book, and a moment later, a bizarre expression surfaced on his face. Noticing the anomaly in Zhang Xian, Luo Ruoxin asked, What's wrong? It's not much, but it seems like the insight which Kong Shi left behind isn't that accurate. Zhang Xian replied with a frown. Through the analysis of the Library of Heaven's Path, it was revealed that there were 9 flaws contained regarding the insight Kong Shi had left behind. If it had been anyone else, even if the other party was a 9-star master teacher, Zhang Xian wouldn't have been so surprised. But Kong Shi, this was a little hard to believe. Even though these flaws were very minor and inconspicuous ones, making it hard for anyone to notice them, they were still mistakes. This was an undeniable fact. To think that even the world's teacher would make such errors. Was this for real? Taken aback, Luo Ruoxin asked, "Isn't that accurate? Do you mean to say that there are problems with the insights Kong Shi left behind?" "That's right. There is a total of 3,324 words contained within Kong Shi's insight, and there is a total of 9 mistakes in it. Even though these were extremely minor mistakes that wouldn't affect the overall picture, still," Zhang Xian said hesitantly. On his journey up the Saint Ascension platform, he had taken in the insights of the predecessors and successfully compiled the Heaven's Path divine art regarding the breakthrough to half-saint, nascent saint, and saint realm. Comparing the compiled Heaven's Path divine art with the insight Kong Shi had left behind, the errors in the latter were apparent. Even though what Kong Shi had left behind was only an insight and not a cultivation technique, most of the cultivators used it for reference for their cultivation. If it wasn't altered, even if one could successfully achieve a breakthrough by referencing the insight, the effects wouldn't be ideal. "You are able to see the mistakes Kong Shi left behind?" Luo Ruoxin exclaimed softly in astonishment as she gazed at him intently. Who was Kong Shi? The world's teacher, the founder of the Master Teacher Pavilion, as well as the man who brought about the eviction of the otherworldly demons from the Master Teacher continent, ushering an era of prosperity for humanity. His contribution to the world was truly immeasurable. Part of the reason Kong Shi had been able to achieve all of those feats was due to his unparalleled talent and unimaginable capabilities. Countless master teachers viewed him as their goal and aspired to be like him, and yet, this fellow had actually said that there were 9 flaws in the insight Kong Shi had left behind. If the master teachers in the surroundings were to hear his words, they would surely fly into a frenzy and pummel him into the ground. Luo Ruoxin's exclamation abruptly brought Zhang Xian back to reality. He suddenly realized that he might have revealed far too much, so he hurriedly patched things up with an awkward smile. Actually, I am not too sure either. There might be a mistake in my comprehension too. Zhang Xian harbored no doubt regarding the Library of Heaven's Path's capability. However, he was currently only a perfect harmonization realm cultivator, so it was inevitable that others might doubt his credibility when he mentioned that there was a mistake in Emperor Kong Shi's words. There is no mistake in your comprehension. There are indeed 9 flaws in the insight Kong Shi left behind. Paying no heed to Zhang Xian's response, Luo Ruoxin nodded affirmatively. The next moment, however, a deep frown surfaced on her forehead as she continued, there are only 2 possibilities to such a happening. First, this insight was left behind by Kong Shi right after he achieved a breakthrough to Saint Realm, long before he became the world's teacher whom everyone respects. If that's the case, it wouldn't be too surprising that he made mistakes. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Luo Ruoxin didn't pursue the matter, and after hearing the words of the latter, he couldn't help but nod in agreement. It would be unfair to judge Kong Shi based on the Library of Heaven's Path. Even with Kong Shi's unparalleled talent, it wasn't too surprising that he might have a few minor mistakes in his comprehension of Saint Realm, especially since he had barely reached Saint Realm himself. On the contrary, it was an extremely impressive feat for a person to have 9 flaws in his comprehension despite only just having reached Saint Realm. What about the second possibility? Zhang Xian asked. The second possibility is that Kong Shi left those flaws within the insight deliberately. After all, there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be men with malicious intent or even those of the otherworldly demonic tribe would attempt to study his insight as well. If so, they would benefit from his teachings as well, and that is no different from delivering a weapon into the hands of the enemies. On top of that, this might be his way of teaching the later generations of master teachers that it is foolish to blindly trust the teachings of others. Even he, the world's teacher, could make mistakes, so they must have a mind of their own and discern what is right and wrong for themselves. Luo Ruoxin said. This. Zhang Xian was stunned. Truthfully, he hadn't thought deeply into Kong Shi's intentions at all. However, What Luo Ruoxin had said was logical and could very possibly be true. It was out of a trust in a teacher's capability that a student would acknowledge the other party as their teacher, but this shouldn't form the basis of blind trust. Only through doubting and questioning established teachings could one surpass one's predecessors and reach greater heights. Could Kong Shi have really intentionally left these 9 minor mistakes in order to challenge the mindset of master teachers? If one could doubt even Kong Shi himself, one might just be able to achieve what no one else ever had. On the other hand, if one were to blindly trust Kong Shi's teachings, even if one were to achieve a breakthrough to Saint Realm, one would soon find one's own accomplishments swiftly being capped by a bottleneck. After a moment of contemplation, Zhang Xian said, if it is the first possibility, Kong Shi should have returned to alter the flaws he left after he established the Master-Teacher Pavilion. The fact that he didn't do so means that it is highly likely that it was the second possibility. Indeed. Luo Ruoxin nodded in approval. If it was a mistake out of ignorance, as the world's teacher, Kong Shi would have surely been ashamed of his failure, thus compelling him to return and correct it. But since he hadn't done so, the odds seemed to lean more toward the second possibility then. But whether there were flaws in the insight or not had little to do with the exact location of where Kong Shi had ascended to sainthood, so there wasn't much point in analyzing the matter any further. I should first study the content of the insight first. If this fails, I will just have to look around slowly. With such thoughts in mind, Zhang Xian immersed his consciousness into comprehending the writing Kong Shi had left behind. The insight described the process of how Kong Shi achieved his breakthrough to Saint Realm. Even though it wasn't explicitly written as a cultivation technique, it was so comprehensive that if one were to jot down the details, it could form a complete cultivation technique. But of course, this cultivation technique was specific only to Kong Shi's constitution. If others were to attempt a breakthrough via that cultivation technique, what would await them was only their own cultivation going berserk. This was somewhat similar to what the Heaven's Path Divine Art was to Zhang Xian. If others attempted to cultivate the Heaven's Path Divine Art, they would first find themselves bleeding profusely from their 7 apertures before they could accomplish anything. After studying for some time, Zhang Xian was unable to find anything reminiscent of a hint from the writing, so he could only give up on it. Standing up, he activated his eye of insight and began combing the area. The peak was extremely spacious. Other than the area before the cliff face, which was completely packed with cultivators, there was still plenty of room to move about. It didn't take too long for Zhang Xian to circle around the area, but he was still unable to find anything. Disappointed, he shook his head helplessly. He hadn't expected it to be so difficult. But thinking about it, if it was that easy, the otherworldly demons would have long found the location and obtained the will that Kong Shi had left behind. With his efforts futile, Zhang Xian was just about to regroup with Luo Ruoxin when a commotion suddenly broke out in front of the cliff face, breaking the tranquility at the peak. There was a large group of people discussing with one another, seemingly sharing their own insights and comprehensions. Zhang Xian couldn't help but grab a middle-aged man not too far away and ask, "Excuse me, may I ask what is going on?" The middle-aged man glanced at Zhang Xian and replied, "You must be new here." Every day, the Saint Ascension Circle conducts lectures to decipher the essence of Kong Shi's teachings. This is an opportunity for everyone to learn and have their doubts answered. Saint Ascension Circle. Zhang Xian had never heard of such an organization before. Noticing Zhang Xian's surprise, the middle-aged man shook his head and said, "The Saint Ascension Circle is a group that specializes in studying and deciphering the writing Kong Shi left behind here. It consists of 13 7-star master teachers and several hundred 6-star master teachers. They aim to uncover the underlying intentions that Kong Shi had when he inscribed his insight onto this cliff face through their research. Over the years, they have already gained a deep understanding of the subject. Outsiders like us might find it hard to comprehend the thoughts of Kong Shi even if we were to stare at the cliff face for an entire month straight, but through their lectures, we can understand the thoughts that the latter had in mind when he was making his breakthrough to Saint Realm. To think that there would be such an organization here. Zhang Xian was speechless. As complicated as it may sound, the circle was actually rather similar to those organizations involved in the study of Readology 2, Goldenology 3, and the other classics in his previous life, a bunch of fellows who had nothing better to do with their lives. If it wasn't out of boredom, why would they bother scrutinizing every single word written, losing themselves in needless profundities? Similarly, Kong Shi had just left his insight on the cliff face in his moment of delight after successfully reaching Saint Realm. What more was there to uncover from that? To think that so many master teachers would devote so many years of their lives to researching something as insignificant as this. Just the thought of it rendered him speechless. The next moment, the middle-aged man exclaimed, "Look, they are here." Following which, 3 elders could be seen walking to the front of the crowd. Chapter 835, cornering dressed in master teacher robes, the 3 elders had snowy hair and beards, and they emanated powerful auras. 7-star master teachers. Glancing at the brilliant emblems pinned at their chests, Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. These elders were actually 7-star master teachers. This meant that their strength had already surpassed even the strongest expert in Hongyuan Empire. "I have kept all of you waiting," one of the elders said with a smile upon reaching the front. His voice wasn't loud, but it resounded clearly within the ears of the listeners. In an instant, the commotion died down. "It's only right for us to wait for elders. It's my honor to listen to elders lecture." The crowd below clasped their fists in response. Most of those who stood before the cliff face were half-saint and nascent saint experts, which translated to 6-star low-tier and 6-star high-tier master teachers. This meant in terms of standing, they paled far in comparison to 3 elders in front. Under such circumstances where they didn't know the names of those before them, it was only right for them to address the other party as elders. "We are all fellow cultivators, so there is no need to stand on ceremony. Allow me to introduce myself first. I am Wu Ran, and I have been managing most of the affairs of the Saint Ascension Circle in recent years. I am a master teacher from Qingzhou Empire, and you can call me Wu Shi," the elder said as he stroked his beard. "Wu Ran. Could you be the incumbent leader of the Saint Ascension Circle? You've heard of him." "Of course." Wu Shi not only possesses a deep comprehension of Kong Shi's insight to Saint Ascension, he is also the principal of Qingzhou Academy. Qingzhou Academy? You mean, the Master Teacher Academy located at Qingzhou Tier 1 Empire? That's right. Qingzhou is one of the 4 empires out of the 46 Tier 1 empires under Qingyuan conferred empire to have a Master Teacher Academy. While Qingzhou Master Teacher Academy is only ranked 3rd of the 4, above only Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, nevertheless, the fact that he could become its principal reflects the immense capability and profound knowledge that he possesses. Seriously? It's truly a huge honor to listen to the lecture of such an incredible person. Shock rippled through the crowd when they heard Wu Ran's name. While the Saint Ascension Circle would conduct lectures there on a daily basis, most of the time, it was conducted by ordinary members. Thus, many of the cultivators of the peak were surprised to see the leader of the circle, a 7-star master teacher and the principal of a master teacher academy, conducting the lecture himself. It was truly a huge honor to have the other party decipher Kong Shi's teachings for them personally. To my left is Wang Liao, Wang Shi, and Sun Jing, Sun Shi. If you have any doubts, feel free to direct them to us. We will try to answer them to the best of our ability. Wu Shi said with a smile. Wang Liao. I've heard of that name before. He once wrote a paper, Kong Shi's Path to Enlightenment, which made a huge uproar in the neighboring Tier 1 empires. It said that the paper brought enlightenment to over 300 cultivators, thus allowing them to overcome their bottlenecks. He is one of the 10 great master teachers of Qingzhou Empire. I have heard of Sun Jing as well. He is one of the 10 great master teachers to Qingzhou Empire, too. The book that he wrote, Nascent Saint Breakthrough Formula, is one of the most sought-after manuals in the region. I had to pay a huge number of high-tier spirit stones to purchase it. To think that I would meet the author in person here. Hearing the names Wu Shi introduced, a huge wave of commotion broke out once again. The two elders behind him weren't nameless figures either, on the contrary, they enjoyed widespread fame. Just that, considering that Qingzhou Empire was extremely far from there, such that it would half a month's journey even on a saint beast, why would those esteemed men suddenly go there? Since it seems like everyone knows of us, I will just get straight down to business. I will start from lecturing everyone about the origin of Kong Shi's insight. After introducing himself, Wu Shi surveyed the surroundings with a meaningful gaze before beginning his lecture. As everyone knows, the era which Kong Shi lived in was the period of time when the otherworldly demonic tribe held the dominant position in the continent. Back then, mankind lived every single day in fear, not knowing when they might be killed. Living in such tumultuous times, even though Kong Shi became a celestial saint, an existence recognized by the heavens, he still worried for mankind and contributed to its welfare. As such, if you were to ruminate over the insight closely, even though it carries a tinge of joy from his advancement to saint realm, at the same time, complex emotions coming from his worry for mankind and the world can be felt from it as well. Worry for mankind and the world. Zhang Xian widened his eyes, unable to believe what he had just heard. Kong Shi had left behind this insight just to remind the later generations to always rely on their own judgment, and to never fully trust the wisdom of their predecessors. How in the world did the other party sense such deep emotions from it? Your imagination sure is vivid. But giving the matter some thoughts, that was indeed the job of academics such as them. They strove to uncover the deeper intentions behind the words of the predecessors so that others could better appreciate them. However, they had a tendency to go too far and overthink even the most minor of details so as to flaunt their knowledge, such that if the author were to come alive once more and see their evaluation of his work, he would also be completely flabbergasted. And from the looks of it, it seemed Wu Shi was such an academic as well. Try reading this writing once more with such emotions, and you will be able to comprehend Kong Shi's state of mind then. Wu Shi continued. Just like this sentence, stale rice and cold water, a bent arm as a pillow, but joy lies not in those but in itself. This is a reflection of the agony mankind suffered under the oppression of the otherworldly demonic tribe. It can be interpreted that despite the suffering Kong Shi endured, he felt utmost joy from working for the welfare of mankind. After listening for a while longer, Zhang Xian's eyelids began twitching uncontrollably. It was not that the other party was exactly wrong, but they had elevated Kong Shi to a height beyond reach in their hearts, to the point where they view him with rose-colored goggles, failing to see the man himself. This would only lead their interpretation further and further away from the truth. However, the other party couldn't be entirely blamed for this either. Kong Shi was simply far too much of a venerated figure among the master teachers, and his infallibility had become a deeply ingrained notion in the minds of many. As such, there was a tendency to evaluate everything that he had left behind in a higher and nobler perspective, and anything other than that would be viewed as challenging Kong Shi's authority and disrespecting one's teacher. However, Zhang Xian was different. As the saying goes, the onlooker gets the clearest glimpse of the situation. Having come from a different world, he didn't possess as deep of an impression of Kong Shi as most in this world, who had been taught to admire and respect Kong Shi from a young age. On top of that, as one who possessed the library of Heaven's Path, he had learned never to place blind faith in the words of others too. Hung Long. But in that moment, a nascent saint cultivator standing just slightly in front of him seemed to have a sudden surge of inspiration, and with a jolt through his body, he abruptly achieved a breakthrough. That sight left Zhang Xian completely stunned. He had just been thinking that the lecture was completely nonsense and would surely be ineffective a moment ago when someone really achieved a breakthrough. A thought suddenly emerged in Zhang Xian's mind. Could this be faith? Perhaps, even Wu Shi himself might have been aware that his interpretation had deviated from Kang Shi's original intention, but he still chose to shape his lecture in such a manner in order to play on the deep respect that master teachers had for Kang Shi. Through empowering this faith, it could strengthen one's resolution, turning it into a driving force for one to achieve a breakthrough. The difference between a saint and a nascent saint lay not only in their cultivation but their state of mind as well. This explained why despite the far-fetched theories that the Saint Ascension Circle proposed, it still enjoyed widespread popularity among the populace. Stroking his beard in satisfaction, Wu Shi continued, "Not bad, someone has already achieved a breakthrough." Moving on, I believe one of the lines that might have many of you stumped is this: composure frees worries, and agitation induces disturbance. If one can devote oneself to the calm, a breakthrough is possible even in the state of stagnancy. Its meaning is simple. As long as one maintains a composed state of mind, even without sufficient jinqi, one can still achieve a breakthrough. This. Zhang Xian couldn't help but burst into a soft chuckle. This happened to be one of the 9 flaws reflected in the Library of Heaven's Path. Maintaining a composed state of mind was indeed important, but one still had to possess sufficient jinqi to achieve a breakthrough. There was a limit to what sheer willpower could do. Nevertheless, it was indeed true that a calm mind could give rise to a state of accomplishment through inaction, inducing the growth of one's jinqi and ultimately allowing for a breakthrough. While there was a flaw in the sentence, it was probably Kang Shi's way of telling the later generations that they shouldn't be overly obsessed with their jinqi cultivation. Tempering the mind was also of utmost importance. Yet, the other party managed to shape it into a secret art to achieving a breakthrough somehow. It was no wonder no one had noticed the 9 flaws and corrected them over all these years. It wasn't that the master teachers were too foolish, but they had placed Kang Shi on far too high a pedestal, and this had led to the twisting of the intentions behind his words. "The friend over there, may I ask if there is anything wrong with my explanation for you to have burst into a chuckle?" Shaking his head, Zhang Xian was about to walk away when he suddenly heard those words. Raising his gaze, he saw Wu Shi staring at him with a deep frown. While everyone else was listening to the interpretation of Kang Shi's insight intently, that fellow was chuckling silently in the corner. This was extremely disrespectful to both him and Kang Shi. As a 7-star master teacher, he could overlook the insult that the young man was showing to him, but he couldn't sit idly when someone was clearly scorning Kang Shi's teachings, especially in sacred grounds like this. On the other hand, Zhang Xian also didn't expect his gesture to be noticed by the other party. Embarrassed, he clasped his fist and bowed. "Hearing your lecture, I suddenly had an epiphany which resulted in my light chuckle. I ask for your understanding if I have been disrespectful." Even if the other party was wrong, it had nothing much to do with him. Knowing that it would only cause a huge uproar if he were to stand up at this moment, he decided to apologize and end the matter there. "Epiphany? Ha ha ha, can a perfect harmonization realm lad like you understand the content of Wu Shi's lecture? Kang Shi's insight is directed toward nascent saint realm experts. Epiphany my head, do you even understand a single word of it?" "Since you had an epiphany, why don't you achieve a breakthrough for us all to see?" Hearing Zhang Xian's words, the crowd in the area burst into laughter. As nascent saint realm experts, they didn't dare claim that they understood Kang Shi's wisdom. Yet, a perfect harmonization realm expert like him had claimed that he'd had an epiphany. How conceited! How could a person have such thick skin? Wu Shi also frowned upon hearing those words. "Oh. If you've had an epiphany, may I invite you to share it with us? This is a good opportunity for us to learn from one another. I shall not embarrass myself up there." Zhang Xian hurriedly waved his hands to turn down the offer humbly. "Are you trying to say that I am embarrassing myself here?" Wu Shi's face darkened. "That's not what I meant though." Not expecting the other party to misinterpret his words, Zhang Xian was stunned. He hurriedly explained, "What I am saying is that with my shallow level of comprehension, my epiphany will only be laughed at, so it isn't worth a mention. If you are saying that the epiphany you had after listening to my lecture will only be laughed at, does that mean that my lecture is hilarious and not worth a mention too? Wu Shi harumphed. You are misunderstanding my words. I am saying that my comprehension of the subject is still shallow, so. Zhang Xian shook his head. If you can have an epiphany despite your shallow comprehension of the subject and chuckle at it, does that mean that the content of my lecture is shallow as well? Wu Shi snapped. Chapter 836, Collapse of the Saint Ascension Platform. If you really wish to understand that in such a manner, there is nothing that I can do. Seeing that the other party was picking flaws with everything that he said, Zhang Xian frowned. We are all master teachers, and you have made your point. Since I have already admitted my mistake, surely you don't have to corner me like that. Audacious. How dare you speak to Wu Shi like that? Where did this arrogant brat come from? Hearing Zhang Xian's words, a huge disturbance broke out amid the crowd. Having listened to Wu Shi's lecture, the group gathered in the area could be considered to be half-students of his. It was one thing that a perfect harmonization realm brat was refusing to listen to the preaching of their half-teacher humbly, but to utter such disrespectful words on top of that. Was he tired of living? I am only asking you to share your epiphany here, how am I cornering you here? Humph. To feign knowledge in the face of ignorance, is this the attitude befitting of a master teacher? With a steely glint in his eyes, Wu Shi took a step toward Zhang Xian. Hung Long. The immense pressure from the overwhelming might of a Saint Tu Dan abruptly fell upon the surroundings as if a tsunami had crashed down upon the area, rendering those caught within it unable to breathe properly. As one who had dedicated a significant portion of his life to studying the quintessence of Kong Shi's insights, Wu Shi carried special feelings for the Saint Ascension platform. As such, he couldn't bear to see another disrespecting it. But from the moment he began his lecture, that fellow had been putting on all kinds of peculiar expressions, even sneering at one point. It was then that his tolerance snapped. To act so frivolously in the grounds where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood. If the other party was his student, he would have surely expelled him from his academy that very instant. That was also why he had lowered himself to bickering with a 4-star master teacher despite being a 7-star master teacher himself. It wasn't out of pettiness but to send out a clear message that any form of disrespect toward Kong Shi was intolerable. Otherwise, if everyone started to act in such a manner, what would become of the master teacher pavilion's dignity? Feign knowledge in the face of ignorance? Driving his heaven's path Xinqi, the pressure weighing down on Zhang Xian dissipated. Lifting his gaze, Zhang Xian stared at Wu Shi directly in the latter's eye and shook his head. I only couldn't be bothered to point out your errors, but you managed to pin so many sins on me. But as stifled as Zhang Xian was within, he didn't feel like starting anything at this very moment, especially since he was here with Luo Ruoxin. Thus, he clasped his fist and said, Yes, I apologize for my ignorance and breach of etiquette, and I hope to seek your understanding. In any case, he knew better than anyone whether he was ignorant or not. It was pointless to argue with another over this, it was not like he could help what the other party thought of him anyway. However, if the other party wished to make an example out of him, he should know better than to push his luck further than this. To be spouting such arrogant words despite your ignorance, you sure are an embarrassment to master teachers. Harumphing coldly, Wu Shi placed his hands behind his back, and with the majestic disposition of a 7-star master teacher, he declared, I do not wish for someone as presumptuous as you to remain on this Saint Ascension platform. Take off your master teacher robe and leave the premises. Take off my master teacher robe and leave the premises. Zhang Xian's face immediately darkened. To be asked to strip one's master teacher robe and scram from the mountain was a huge humiliation. If word of this matter were to spread, his path as a master teacher could very well come to an end at this point. He had already given so many concessions, but the other party simply continued to try to corner him. Did the other party think that he was an easy target to bully just because he was young? Even if you wish to send out a stern warning to others, you have already made your point. This is going beyond the limits. Could it be that I have an extremely loathsome face and anyone who meets me just has to provoke me and teach me a lesson? That's right. Wu Shi glanced at Zhang Xian coldly. Reluctant? Don't make me do it personally, it won't end as simply as that if I have to get involved. Noticing the hostility in Wu Shi's eyes, Zhang Xian turned his gaze to Wu Shi, revealing his narrowed eyes. I have already given you so many concessions, but you just want to stick your face in here, don't you? Your lecture is utter nonsense, filled with flaws everywhere, and it is only out of respect for you as a fellow master teacher that I chose not to expose you publicly. Yet, you started going after me instead. He had already gone as far as to apologize, but the other party still refused to step down. Why? Will you only be contented after you slap my face? Fine, here is my face. Slap it if you can. What did you say? Not expecting a perfect harmonization realm cultivator to speak to him so insolently, Wu Shi's expression turned livid. Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up as he uttered coldly, "Don't you have ears to hear what I am saying?" Kong Shi left his insight as both a warning and advice to the later generations. It is one thing to distort the meaning of Kong Shi's words, but to even go around spreading false teachings and beguiling others, you should be thankful that I didn't rip apart your lies. To be putting on an act before me here, are you trying to act as if you are formidable? He had been intending to keep a low profile and say nothing much, but the other party simply refused to stop. Just because I am sparing your face, do you think that I am some kind of idiot? Not expecting the other party to speak so rudely to him, Wu Shi nearly burst into rage. Audacious. Audacious? Who is the one being audacious here? Kong Shi left his insight here in order to test the later generations. There is a total of 9 flaws here, but despite the many years your Saint Ascension Circle has dedicated to uncovering its secrets, you have never noticed them. What have you been doing all these years? As the incumbent leader of the circle, don't you feel the slightest guilt or embarrassment? Zhang Xian spoke sharply without any reservations. Since the other party had decided to corner him like that, it would be impolite of him not to return the favor. 9 flaws? How could Kong Shi make any mistakes? This is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. Stop talking nonsense over there. Those words had left not only Wu Shi stunned, but it had sparked a huge wave of criticism from the surrounding cultivators as well. To them, the infallible Kong Shi making a mistake was no different from the sky falling on them. How could they possibly believe it? You don't believe my words? Fine, I will point out the 9 flaws right here and now for everyone to hear. Since he couldn't be bothered to waste any more time bickering over this matter, Zhang Xian stepped forward to the cliff face and pointed with his finger. A surge of Jinqi gushed out from his fingertip as if a ray of light, highlighting the area where the first flaw was located. The first flaw lies in this line: composure frees worries, and agitation induces disturbance. If one can devote himself to the calm, a breakthrough is possible even in the state of stagnancy. What this line is truly saying is that one's strength and spirit must be in harmony in order to attain true power. Strength without spirit makes one no different from a beast, a being with nothing but brute strength. Without a unique encounter, it would be impossible for one to achieve a breakthrough. On the other hand, spirit without strength is nothing more than a pipe dream. Kong Shi only left behind a portion of the full quote in order to provoke deeper thoughts in the later generation and comprehend that just having spirit alone or strength alone is futile. Yet, Wu Shi claimed that as long as one can achieve a composed state of mind, one can achieve a breakthrough even without strength. Impressive, why don't you achieve a breakthrough to show all of us? What are you waiting for? Go on. You. Wu Shi's face flushed scarlet in embarrassment. The second flaw lies in the phrase, fear the world, peer into the unknown horizon, embrace worries and fear, and only then will you advance. What this means is that it is imperative to feel fear because that will become the drive for strength. If one remains complacent or escapes from one's fears, one will only stagnate. There is no problem with this line for those who have just started treading on the path of cultivation. But upon reaching Saint Realm, one will be wrestling with the heavens for power. If one were to allow fear to remain in one's heart, how could one possibly win against the heavens? A true expert must be capable of overcoming anything in their path. Fear should only be the basis to building up fearlessness, and only with a fearless mindset can one charge bravely ahead and overcome all odds in one's path. The third flaw. The fourth flaw. Zhang Xian's words were sharp like knives, cutting straight into the flaws of the insights. They might be minor flaws, but it left the listeners in a daze, and they couldn't help but tremble in astonishment. It was not that they had never had their doubts regarding certain aspects of the writing, but as this was the insight left behind by the venerated Kong Shi, they disregarded such thoughts and blamed it on their ignorance instead. But in this instant, for everything to be laid bare so clearly before them, their faces couldn't help but pale, and a tempest raged within their hearts. Could Kong Shi really have been mistaken? But, that's Kong Shi. How could he be wrong? He was the world's teacher. At that instant, Wu Shi was completely dumbstruck as well. As a 7-star master teacher, he had the judgment to tell that there were no mistakes in what the other party had said. However, as one who had immersed himself in the study of the insight for many years, those words were a huge blow to him, collapsing the faith which he had held firmly all those years. And this is the 9th flaw. In a single breath, Zhang Xian revealed all 9 flaws. Even though the entire area was ghastly silent, not a single person dared to utter a word or breathe loudly. Nearly everyone had already been convinced by his words. Wang. As soon as Zhang Xian's words came to a halt, a blinding light suddenly burst into the surroundings. The next moment, 9 words from the 9 flaws abruptly tore out from the cliff face and morphed into 9 massive words. My commendations. Blindly trusting another, why not trust yourself? At the same time, the words in the 9 flaws began rearranging themselves, and in just a short moment, they were corrected, and the writing became perfected. This is Kong Shi's acknowledgement. He received Kong Shi's acknowledgement. It's not that Kong Shi was mistaken, but that, this is a test he left behind for the later generations. It's a pity that we never saw through it. Even the Saint Ascension Circle was unable to do so over all of those years. How could the crowd still not comprehend what was going on after all that had happened? Their bodies stiffened, and they couldn't help but kneel to the ground. Since even Kong Shi had given his acknowledgement, it could only mean that the words of the young man were correct. Wu Shi's ridicule and their mockery had instantly become nothing more than a joke. This. Has all the time I spent studying Kong Shi's writing been futile? In this moment, Wu Shi's face paled, and he couldn't help but stagger backward weakly. The complexion of the 2 elders beside him, Wang Shi and Sun Shi, also paled, and they could hardly accept what was happening before them. It couldn't be more apparent to them that it was a test Kong Shi had set for them, but they had gone centuries without noticing it, and they had even taken pride in their analysis. With many years of debates among many master teachers, the members of the Saint Ascension Circle had thought that they were only a step away from fully comprehending Kong Shi's intent. But in this instant, it suddenly dawned on them that all of those profound theories they had come up with were nothing more than utter gibberish. Kacha. With the appearance of those 9 words, an incomparably powerful aura suddenly spread over the crowd, jolting their souls. In an instant, they lost control of themselves and entered a unique state of mind. Following which, the cliff face behind began shaking violently. As if it had finally fulfilled its raison d'être, cracks began appearing on it. The cracks swiftly crept across the entire cliff face, shrouding its entirety before everything abruptly collapsed with a deafening boom. Smithereens flew all over the place, and a huge cloud of dust rose in the air. In just a few short moments, the 3,324 words Kong Shi had left behind had disappeared from existence. The heck? Watching as all of that unfolded before him, Zhang Xian felt as if he was going to burst into tears. He'd known that there were mistakes with the insight, but he hadn't thought that the cliff face would be so fragile as to collapse just by having them pointed out. You fell valiantly and magnificently with a bang, but what about me? With all of the master teachers gathered here to witness how I murdered you, they will definitely have me pay with my life. Must you really do me in like that? On the other hand, Luo Ruoxin was busy searching around for the exact location where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood when she abruptly heard the deafening rumble. Astonished, her body trembled in astonishment as she hurriedly turned her gaze to the cliff face. There, she saw the dazed Zhang Xian, whose mouth was twitching non-stop before the cliff face. Both her eyes and mouth slowly widened in shock. I was only gone for a moment. Why you? What did you do this time? This is the Saint Ascension platform, you know. How can you destroy this as well? Chapter 837, Folded Space. The very heart of the Saint Ascension platform lay in the insight inscribed into the cliff face at the very top. As this was something that Kong Shi had left behind, there was no master teacher who didn't view it as a sacred relic. None dared to speak loudly before it for fear of desecrating it. Yet, you actually reduced it to smithereens shortly after your arrival. In its current state, even restoration is no longer a feasible option. It is one thing for you to mess around in the academy. After all, in consideration of its own reputation, the academy will try to suppress the matters that happen within its grounds. But this. Do you have a deep-seated grudge against all infrastructures, or were you simply born with the innate potential to become the god of destruction? Does the word careful not exist in your dictionary? To dare destroy even the sacred lands where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood. Can't you at least pick a less prominent target than that? You are slapping the entire master-teacher pavilion in its face. Without a doubt, you can't even need to dream of leaving the mountain anymore. Any moment now, countless master teachers will be pouncing on you, grinding you into meat paste. Speechless, Luo Ruoxin hurriedly rushed up to Zhang Xian, grabbed his sleeve, and hurriedly pulled him away to flee. She was the one who had taken Zhang Xian there, so she felt that she had to take responsibility for him. No matter what, it couldn't be wrong for them to flee at that very instant. Otherwise, once everyone came to, they would be goners. Luo Ruoxin had thought that Zhang Xian, knowing that he was in deep trouble, would flee with the lightest tug, but to her surprise, the latter was completely motionless. It was as if he was rooted to the spot. Hurry up and leave. Luo Ruoxin exclaimed anxiously. Just wait a moment. Zhang Xian grabbed Luo Ruoxin's sleeve and halted her instead. With his other hand, he pointed to the rubble and said, "Take a look at this." Take a look at what? Hearing that Zhang Xian was still in the mood to look at the rubble, Luo Ruoxin frowned. However, what she saw next left her eyelids twitching uncontrollably. What was within the rubble wasn't just dust or debris but a meter-square stone platform with a peculiar light halo circling above it as well. A holy and majestic aura flowed from it, reminiscent of an object from the heavens. Could this be the place where Kong Shi ascended to sainthood? Luo Ruoxin's body trembled in agitation. That was the main reason she was there. After going around the peak and finding nothing at all, she had thought that perhaps it had already disappeared along with the ages, never to be found again. Who could have known that it would be hidden in the cliff face instead? That explained why the otherworldly demonic tribe had been unable to find anything despite ransacking the place. Back then, what they had destroyed was only the words on the wall, but the cliff face had survived their rampage. In the midst of her shock, Luo Ruoxin felt someone tugging at her sleeves. "Let's head over there to take a look," Zhang Xian said as he pulled her to the stone platform. Without any hesitation, Luo Ruoxin swiftly followed behind him. The light halo was barely visible amid the cloak of dust drifting in the area. Walking up to it, Zhang Xian's hand stretched for it and touched it lightly. Who? The light halo immediately expanded, enveloping their bodies. The next instant, Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin suddenly felt an intense falling sensation as the world flew past them, disappearing in a flash. When the brilliant flash of light finally dissipated, Zhang Xian, Luo Ruoxin, and the stone platform disappeared from sight, as if they had never been there in the first place. So that is indeed the truth behind the insight. I never would have thought that my years of research were actually in vain. It was only after the disappearance of the duo that Wu Shi and the others finally began to move once more, as if having just recovered from their shock. After the appearance of the 9 words from Kong Shi's acknowledgement, they had been sent into a momentary trance. It was only a short while after that they finally returned to reality. Recalling the mystical sight they had just seen, their faces flushed scarlet in agitation. Wasn't the goal of the Saint Ascension Circle to uncover the real meaning behind Kong Shi's words? Even though the one who had done it was just a perfect harmonization realm lad, it was a fact that they had finally uncovered what they had sought for innumerable years. Where is the esteemed elder who deciphered Kong Shi's insight? The crowd hurriedly turned to the location where Zhang Xian had been standing a moment ago, but the ground was completely empty. There was not a person to be seen. At the same time, their address had also turned from brat to elder as a form of respect. He isn't here anymore. He was standing right there just a moment ago. Wang Shi muttered in astonishment. In their perception, barely a second had passed since the appearance of the 9 words from Kong Shi, but that was only a false impression they had due to the momentary trance. They bore no recollection of Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin stepping into the cloud of dust and disappearing in a flash of light, as though everything that had just occurred was a dream. To be able to decipher Kong Shi's intentions and earn his acknowledgement, that young man is anything but simple. It's a pity that we know nothing about him. Wu Shi shook his head in embarrassment. Just a moment ago, he had been accusing the other party of feigning knowledge in the face of ignorance. However, it couldn't be clearer to him at this moment that the other party was far more knowledgeable than him. He felt like a clown prancing around a true expert to flaunt his half-baked knowledge. His actions were truly embarrassing. Nevertheless, a 7-star master teacher should have the magnanimity worthy of one. He had indeed wronged the other party, and if given a chance to meet that elder once more, he would surely apologize to the other party sincerely. Wu Shi, the cliff face has collapsed. Sun Shi remarked in worry. Each year, countless cultivators would visit the Saint Ascension platform in hopes of achieving a breakthrough. For such a thing to happen, how were they supposed to explain this to the Master Teacher Pavilion? The Saint Ascension platform is a valuable asset, but the writing on the wall was not Kong Shi's personal writing but an imitation. Besides, even though it has collapsed, we have perfected the inside instead. Thus, not only is there no loss to the Master Teacher Pavilion, it's also a huge merit. I will contact the Painter Guild right now and have them send someone to conduct restoration works. This time, we shall inscribe the correct version onto it. Wu Shi said with glowing eyes. Kong Shi's words had already reflected his acknowledgement and acceptance of this matter. Since even Kong Shi wasn't angry, who were they to be furious in his stead? Not to mention, with the perfected insight, they would surely be able to attract more people to the Saint Ascension platform, thus furthering Kong Shi's teachings. Wang Shi, help me calm everyone down here. Sun Shi, follow me to comb the surroundings to see if we can find the young man. If we could have him lecture here on Kong Shi's writing, we will surely benefit greatly from his teachings. Wu Shi said. All right. Sun Shi and Wang Shi nodded. After making arrangements, Wu Shi and Sun Shi hurriedly headed down the mountain to pursue the young man. With their nimble footsteps, it didn't take long for them to reach the bottom of the mountain. Yet, it was as if the young man had just vanished from the face of the world. That young man might have caused the collapse of the cliff face, but he had correctly interpreted Kong Shi's intentions and won his acknowledgement. Despite being 7-star master teachers, they were only glad that they could see such a grand sight with their own eyes. It's such a pity. Unable to find the young man, the duo sighed deeply in lamentation. After disappearing from the spot, Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin suddenly found themselves standing in a completely different place from where they had been previously. Before them was a lush field of grass and flowers. Not too far away, there was a simple straw cottage. Where is this? Zhang Xian was dazed by this abrupt change in surroundings. It was just a moment ago that he had been standing at the peak of a mountain, but in the blink of an eye, he had suddenly appeared in a field. Recalling that he was still grabbing the other party's sleeves, he quickly turned around, only to see Luo Ruoxin's reddened face as she hurriedly tugged her sleeves out of his grip. A moment later, after she had recovered from the embarrassment, Luo Ruoxin took a look at the surroundings and said, "If I am not mistaken, this should be a folded space." Folded space? Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. A folded space refers to a region where space is pressed together to create vast lands in a very small area. Storage rings are a use of folded space, too. However, the conditions in storage rings are too extreme to contain humans, whereas folded space such as this can, Luo Ruoxin replied. Zhang Xian nodded. Sounds like the myriad anthive nest. That's right, it is fundamentally similar to the myriad anthive nest, but folded spaces are typically much larger. Luo Ruoxin nodded. It isn't too difficult to determine whether the place you are in is a folded space or not. As folded spaces are usually artificial and less stable, the space within it shakes easily with sufficient force. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian took a deep breath and abruptly punched forward. Hong long long. An immense shock wave burst into the surroundings, and the surrounding space seemed to shake slightly. It does seem to be rather unstable, Zhang Xian remarked. This verified that the area they were in was indeed a folded space. However, to be able to compress such a huge space into just a small area, this capability was far more powerful than that possessed by the anthive myriad queen. Just how fearsome must the one who constructed it be? Having guessed Zhang Xian's thoughts, Luo Ruoxin said, unless one possesses some kind of exceptional means, only 9-star master teachers are capable of utilizing this ability. 9-star master teachers? Zhang Xian was astonished. That was an existence that stood at the very top of the continent. Even with the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian wouldn't dare to speak loudly before such an existence. There was simply too huge a disparity between their standing and strength that not even his disguise could make up for. Could this have been left behind by Kong Shi? Zhang Xian asked. Just by touching a light halo hidden within the cliff face on the Saint Ascension platform, he had been transported here. As such, it was likely that this was Kong Shi's design. By exposing the flaws publicly, Zhang Xian might have triggered some kind of mechanism that Kong Shi had left behind on the cliff face. That's very possible, but it's still too early to say for sure. Let's head to the straw cottage to take a look first. Perhaps we might find something conclusive there. Luo Ruoxin said. All right. Zhang Xian replied. The straw cottage looked rather shabby, similar to that which he had seen on Leiyuan Peak. The door was unlocked, and pushing on it lightly, Jia. The duo entered the cottage. The room was around 20 to 30 square meters large. There was a square table at the center of the room, and an ancient scroll was placed on it. Zhang Xian exchanged glances with Luo Ruoxin before reaching for the scroll and opening it gently. Words were written on the scroll, and the content was identical with what was inscribed on the cliff face outside. These words weren't as fanciful as those outside, but as simple and inelegant as they were, they seemed to strike a chord deep within one's heart. This is Kong Shi's handwriting. Zhang Xian's eyes narrowed. The next instant, his blood flow hastened as if triggered by something, and he subconsciously began releasing the authoritative aura of a celestial master teacher. Soon, He fell into a trance. Soul tempering of a mentor's calligraphy. Luo Ruoxin frowned. Without a doubt, what was left on the scroll was definitely Kong Shi's personal writing. Only the world's teacher had the capability to draw one into a unique state of mind just by his words alone. Once triggered, the soul tempering of a mentor's calligraphy tempered one's state of mind, raising one's soul depth. It was an encounter that happened only by chance and was desired by all master teachers. Knowing that she mustn't interrupt Zhang Xian at this crucial moment, Luo Ruoxin left him to be. She took a swift look around the cottage, but other than the scroll, there was nothing else to be found. Shaking her head slowly, she left the cottage. She took a walk around the field surrounding the cottage, and the frown on her face slowly deepened. It was impossible to tell what she was thinking, but the slightly expectant gleam in her eyes seemed to have dimmed in disappointment. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.